Nicolette. Yeah, okay. We'll have to mangle it somehow. Well, now it's time's up. We're on. Don't forget your mics. I put mine on.
For renewal.
Clip it to my car.
Why don't you come on up and make yourself comfortable
Yeah,
here?
this Jenny was on.
I've got some formalities to take care of.
That for you?
No, doesn't matter.
Oh, Marion, I didn't know you were going to be on this one.
Yes, I've joined them for this.
Okay, that's good.
I represented them for their original.
Oh, did you?
Variance,
Okay, that's
yeah.
great. Well, welcome aboard again. It's good to see you.
I could have told you that.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Do you remember that? That's great. Did you bring your sandwiches tonight?
No, I had my sandwiches before I came. Sorry, I didn't bring you anything, though.
Well, that's all right. We'll hold it against you.
31.
Okay, here we go. We all set to start?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to start our first hearing of the evening. This is the application of Evan Plomaridis and Nicolette Smith. The application is dated December 9th, 2019, on file for the Board of Appeals for a variance. The applicants are requesting to renew a lapsed variance, which was originally granted by the Board of Appeals on September 21, 2018, in which my colleague, Jeffrey Mullen, was sitting as acting chairman on that. And the applicants are proposing to build a two-family home on a parcel known as Parcel 42, as shown on a map. The property is located at 28 Blue Hill Avenue in Milton. And the bylaw provides for the construction of two-family homes only on issuance by a special permit by the Board of Appeals. Then it goes into a very technical explanation that I'm going to leave to Mrs. McGettrick, because that's what she's getting paid for, because it sounds gibberish and confusing. But that's what you have to do if you're building a two-family that needs a special permit. Here, this lot lies between two homes at 28 and 38 Blue Hill Avenue. And since 28 Blue Hill Avenue is a single-family home, this proposal doesn't qualify for a special permit but requires a variance. So this bylaw requires some sophisticated analysis by an experienced lawyer before the Board of Appeals. The property's in a Residence C zoning district. All is set forth in the application and plans on file with the board. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. To my immediate left is board member Jeffrey Mullen, who sat on this application originally. And to my immediate right is board member Nicholas Gray. The rules of the board, we'll hear from the applicant, and we'll hear from anyone who wants to ask questions of the applicant. Then people who wish to speak in support of the application or in opposition to the application. We're tape recording the premise of the hearing tonight. And so I'd ask that before anyone speaks, tell us your name and address, speak up nice and clear and loud so that we have an accurate record of the hearing in the event that the board has to go to the tapes in order to write a decision on this matter. We're going to have evidence at this hearing, the 12/9/19 application of Mr. Plomaridis and Nicole Smith. I knew I'd forget. We have a copy of the application and the variance, which was granted on, I believe, January 16th, 2018. Just let me check that. It's actually September 21st, 2018. The panel was Mr. Mullen as acting chairman, Virginia Donahue King, and Kathleen O'Donnell, who is now on the planning board. So together with that application are some plans and drawings that we're going to take into evidence. So the applicant here is being represented by Mrs. Marion McGettrick of Crown Street, I believe it is,
Yes, thank
in
you.
Milton, Massachusetts. So what is it? 10 Crown Street in Milton, Massachusetts. So welcome to the Board of Appeals, Mrs. McGettrick and Mr. Plomaridis and Ms. Nicolette, and we're glad to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And yes, I'm Mary McGettrick. I'm representing the applicants tonight, but I also represented them for their original variance application. And I'm going to ask the applicants to explain the reasons why there's been a delay But I'll just very briefly, since all of you were not sitting on that board originally, although I'm sure Mr. Mullen remembers it quite well,
remember
because the
well.
hearing lasted from February 2018 till September 2018. We
State
had
highway.
several postponements, we had several hearings. Originally, we delayed because we were trying to get a curb cut from Mass Highway. This is a state road, and
That took
the
you
applicant was inexperienced with that process. Well,
necessary.
they weren't able to get it because they
Could
can't,
have taken shorter or longer.
It has nothing to do with MassDOT's ability to get things done.
no, they were actually, they tried to be very helpful, but it turned out that you couldn't get the curb cut finished until you had a building permit. You couldn't get a building permit until you had the variance. So it was one of these things where we were going around in circles, and we're not particularly experienced with that process. So I do apologize for the amount of time that we had to spend with the board the last time. But meanwhile, because we had several hearings, I was able to develop a lot of additional information. I did an analysis of the zoning, of the housing patterns in that immediate neighborhood, how many two families, how many three families, how many four families, and by streets, and presented that to the board. We looked at the fact that it's very close to Mattapan Square, very close to a bike path, to mass transit, and our argument was that in this location, it made some sense, if there was going to be new construction on this lot, to make it a two-family with two moderate, not very big apartments, because the occupants of the apartment can walk to Mattapan Square. They don't even have to have a car, but if they do, they can have one car. And Bill Clark came in and spoke to the board about the fact that the master plan says that the town needs more apartment housing close to public transportation. I think that was a factor. And the board also decided that they might consider allowing it two-family. They did not want it to become a condominium ownership, form of ownership. So I actually haven't reread this again, but I believe that's a condition in the original variance. And the board should be aware of that, because I think that was something that in the end perhaps helped us succeed in getting the approval of the two-family, because it was addressing specifically a type of housing need that was talked about in the town's master plan. So if it's okay, I'd like to ask anybody of the applicants who'd like to just talk a bit about what happened after. It did take a long time to get this variance, and in that time, of course, money was spent and so on and so forth, and so it was not necessarily financially feasible for them to immediately go forward. But if you could talk a bit about what's happened in the year, because you had a year to start work.
Definitely.
I hope you're going to tell us you hit the lottery or something.
Yeah. My name's Evan Plumeritis
Not that
at
good.
28 Blue Hill Avenue. Yeah, we just, we had a couple of things happen within the family and a couple of things happen at home that had us put some finances in different places, and I think we're in a better position now to where we could move forward with the project.
Okay, anything you want to add, or?
Because we currently occupy 28 Blue Hill, which is the house on the lot as well, too. And we're in the process of restoring that house as well, too. So some of the finances went to finishing that, which was a little bit more than we thought it would be.
Yeah, I should have, again, because you weren't all at the original hearing, I should mention, because we certainly talked about that quite a bit, but 28 Blue Hill Ave is an historic Victorian house, and the owners have been working for a while on restoring and repairing that, which is always expensive. But the proposal was to build, there are actual building plans in the application, and the proposed structure doesn't necessarily look like a two-family. It's a two-story house with a porch in the front, but like a number of other two-families in the neighborhood, you'd enter through the front porch, and then you go up to the second floor, and there'd be another apartment upstairs. It's a style, a simple, I call it sort of a farmhouse style, but a very simple style, but similar to other structures in the neighborhood. It won't be incongruous next to the Victorian. It also, won't be quite as large looking as the Victorian. Even during the hearing, we talked about things like whether you could do a condominium arrangement with 2 units on one lot. Our zoning just doesn't allow that. So none of those ideas could work out. The only thing that was feasible if you wanted to do the additional unit was to simply do 2 apartments.
Okay, great. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Let me see if the board members have any questions. Mr. Mullen, do you have any questions?
Getting, did you actually get the permit, the curb cut permit from the district?
They will not issue the curb cut permit until the applicants have a building permit.
Okay.
So we were told. Now, you know, they had some discussion about it, and they looked at it, but they were unwilling. You should talk to that,
Yeah,
because
we
I
went
didn't
back
talk
and
to them.
forth pretty like extensively, like walking into the, like, I think it's the 9th or the 12th floor of MassDOT, speaking directly with Vivek, who's like the head engineer up there, like multiple conversations.
Do you remember his name?
Vivek is his
Yeah,
first
is he
name.
that?
Yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah, great guy. It gave me very clear direction, hey, do this. And then I was communicating probably with the wrong engineer at the time. And then a couple of things took place, and we put finances in other places and kind of got put on a back burner. But it seems like something that can be accomplished once this is approved.
So remind me, was the driveway going to be moved to the side of the lot? Is that what's going on? Do you have a driveway now or no?
Incorrect. So there's a driveway on 28 Blue Hill Ave.
Yeah.
And then this new lot, we're going to have to do a new driveway. So there
Should
will
be
be a
two
new curb
driveways.
cut.
Yeah. As you face the house, it's on the
Yeah,
right.
okay. Is the project changed at all?
No.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Gray.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Mullen's question. So the drawings that we have here, you're going to be constructing, if you get the variance, the new residence substantially in conformity with these plans? True?
That's the hope, yeah.
Okay, great. I don't have any further questions, unless, do you have a follow-up, Jeff?
Well, no, I mean, I just, I remember this hearing pretty well because this was really about adding units, and Bill was very supportive of it due to the dearth of this kind of
Mr.
unit.
Clark.
Yeah, so, and one of the reasons why we hung in there on this was it seemed like the right use for the right spot, and I know the town planner was in favor of that, consistent with the master plan, so there's a little bit background. I mean, this stands out in my memory.
Mrs. McGettrick, let me just ask you, you've talked with Bill Clark, and he still is in support of this
Yes,
application? true?
nothing has changed in terms of the objectives of the planning board, or whether, I mean, they still would be interested in seeing, at least Bill Clark speaking for the planning department would still be interested in seeing this happen.
Okay, great. Let me ask, is there anybody present this evening who either has any questions of the applicant, Mrs. McGettrick, or who wishes to otherwise speak in support of this variance application? So the record indicates there's no such person present. Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition to this variance application? Okay, so there's nobody present who wishes to speak in opposition. If you have nothing further, we'll end the evidence portion of the hearing and discuss this application in open session and vote on it here and now. Mr. Mullen, do you want to be heard first, since you have some familiarity with this?
I'm going to vote to support the variance application, again with the condition that it be complete within 1 year time, and hopefully we won't be back here in a year seeking
Has it been
to renew
completed or
it.
started within 1 year and consistently,
I think it's the latter, yeah.
you consistently move
Yeah,
forward towards
yeah.
progress? Okay,
So I'm in favor.
okay. Mr. Gray?
It sounds like a nice project, would help fit a need in the town, and no opposition to it, so I'm certainly in favor of re-granting the variance, extending it.
Okay, well, I thought the application was very well presented. If you read the paperwork, everything is in here. It's a very technical interpretation of the variance statute, and the application and the project is complex. But what's being done here makes consummate sense, and is certainly in the best interests of the applicants. I presume, but I didn't ask, but maybe I should, that the neighbors were consulted on this, and everyone's in favor of it, and nobody's expressed any opposition to this.
No, that's right. The neighbors felt, they had no objection, that's the best way to put it.
Okay.
Those who took an interest did not object to the application.
very clear as to what was taking place, and you're just dealing with extraordinary circumstances here, and I think probably the personal upset in not being able to complete the project because it was so complex and it takes so much time and it takes so much money, and by the time you get ready to get the application and it's allowed, you can't pull the trigger on the project, and you have to put it in the bank for a year or so. So I appreciate that, and I know we've had several of these matters, not the specific facts here, and they're difficult and heartbreaking. So I'm glad you came back. It's a great project, so I intend to vote for this, and with the conditions set forth in the original decision of the board. So all of those in favor of granting this application for a variance with the original conditions set forth in that application, and with the further proviso, and I'm not sure whether this is in there or not, that the applicants pull a building permit and begin construction within a year, and then you have to continue in a reasonable fashion to complete the project in a fair amount of time. And that's up to Mr. Prondak. You're not going to be dealing with us on that. So as long as you keep Mr. Prondak happy that the project is moving forward, then we're happy too. Okay? So congratulations on your variance application, your decision.
Thank you.
Good. We'll try to crank this out. Let me just ask you one question. When are you going to do the construction here? Are you doing this in the spring, or are you
The
ready to?
intention would be this spring.
Okay, so we have a little time. You don't need a decision within 10 days or 20 days.
No huge rush.
Great.
No. As long as we get a decision, we'll be very
Yeah.
happy. Thank you.
Okay,
Definitely,
that's great. Well, congratulations on your variance. Thanks, Marion, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Want me to do this?
No, you're going away. I'll do it.
This will change the name.
Million Marion.
You're welcome. Congratulations.
You're going to New York and then Virginia, getting on a train,
Questions come up?
camel, helicopter.
Bye-bye.
Is that where you go? You go to Orlando?
No, I go to
That's what I thought.
Chesapeake Beach. I'd have to fly back. A couple of court hearings.
Good. Keep you busy. Keep you sharp. You got to do that at your age.
Thank you very much.
Keep sharp.
Sharp. We can talk about that off camera. Hello, folks. Hi.
Hello.
Just give me 2 seconds to
Sure.
kind of get my act together here.
Sure.
Me. Right now, it's behind 131 Brook Road. Right? But 131 Brook Road is now at the top of the pile. The traffic is done.
Have your phone number memorized. Or your email. Actually, I do.
I'll cover some preliminaries. It may take 3 or 4 minutes.
Sure, no
I
worries.
just want to be sure, Mrs. McGettrick, there's been some correspondence that the board has received. And I just want to be sure that you received that, and
I believe I have copies of everything between what was sent to me, thank you very much, and what the applicants have given me.
okay, great.
Yes, well, when the applicant.
Okay, we're going to call to order our second hearing of the evening. This is on the application, is it J-Mast or G-Mast? How do you pronounce that?
Oh, no, I think that's the
owner of
property
building.
owner.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I would say J-Mask, but.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, you're representing the tenants.
Yeah,
and not the-
well, I mean, I've certainly
The
been
owner
talking to
influence.
the owner, and the owner is supporting the application.
Okay,
He wants
so
them to do it,
you know
but
whether it's G-Mast or J-Mast?
the name didn't come up.
Okay, good. I'm going to say it's G-Mast LLC and Elliott Physical Therapy the applicants, dated December 9th, 2019, and they're looking for variances under the terms of Section 3A and 3B3 of the zoning bylaw, and seeking a modification of one variance condition relating to hours of the property at 475 Adams Street, Milton, in accordance with variances that were originally granted by the Board of Appeals on February 23rd, 2018. The lot is a Residence C lot, and the applicants are seeking the approval for certain signage, which I will not get into at this stage of the advertisement, and leave that to Mrs. McGetrick to make her presentation. The applicants are also seeking a modification of the hours to be allowed, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Thursday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Fridays, and 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturdays, with no hours on Sundays and no hours on New Year's Day, Memorial Day, the 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. On other holidays, the same hours as the weekends are being requested, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. All is set forth in the application. My name is John Leonard. I'm Chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me tonight to my immediate right is Board Member Nick Gray, and to my immediate left is Board Member Jeffrey Mullen. The rules of the board are just like the first hearing. We'll hear the applicants. We'll hear anybody who has questions of the applicants. We'll listen to people who have questions of the applicants and people who wish to object to this variance application. We have I've summarized the advertisement. As evidence at the hearing, we'll have the application, which is dated December 9, 2019. We have an explanatory letter by Mrs. Marion V. McGetrick of 10 Crown Street in Milton, who's present tonight to represent the parties. It's dated December 9th, and that will be Mrs. McGetrick's presentation, so it's somewhat lengthy. I'm not going to put everyone to sleep by reading it, and I'll rely on Mrs. McGetrick to get into the nitty-gritty of that. There are some plans and schematics attached to the application, which, again, we'll leave to Mrs. McGetrick, but we have them as evidence here at the hearing. And we have variances that were granted to 131 Elliott Street and through Attorney Edward J. Corcoran. We have this as part of the record that's dated February 23rd, 2018. We have a quitclaim deed for the property that's appears authentic, but it says it's not an official copy.
Apologies for that, just saves me money.
That's fine. And we have an unofficial property card of the property showing the various physical features of the property. So, yes, we'll have all of those as evidence. We have several letters that the board has received. And so let me read the first one because it's short, and they don't see Mr. Wells present tonight. It's dated January 21, 2020. To the Board of Appeals, I'm writing to you regarding a request that comes before your board from Darrell Elliott, president of Elliott Physical Therapy. My request comes as a resident of East Milton and one who has had great interest in the success and viability of East Milton. Darrell and Patty Elliott have been strong and welcomed presence, not just to the business community of Milton, but as a critical aspect of the excellent health care for patients of all ages. That means we're not disqualified, Mr. Mullen. Their work enhances the lives of many, both young and old. I am not a patient there, but I've watched their business grow over the years, as well as its contribution to the town. The new facility on Adams Street is very impressive. I'm aware that they have asked for a change in working hours, and I understand that this request would align more closely with the operating hours to their original office, which was located across the street at 480 Adams Street. I strongly support their request for this change of hours, and I thank you immensely for hearing me on this issue. Signed, Richard G. Wells, 31 Granite Place, Milton, Massachusetts. We've also received 2 letters. Maybe it's 3 letters, but They're not the same. Okay, well, let's do them in sequence. The first letter is dated January 11th, 2020, and oh, I'm sorry, of course. Before when I'm dealing with letters, let me deal with the letters, and I'll come back to that, which is, as a preamble, it's an analysis of the sign committee.
Okay.
From Mr. Is it Zikowitz? Or
Zikowitz.
Zikowitz, Jr. I'll get into that after I go through the letters. So you're right, there are two letters, they're both dated January 22nd, 2020. They're both from Michael and Jessica Sergi. And one of the letters says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 citizens have signed on to the first letter, including the Sergis. So let me just ask, Ms. Sergi, you're here? Okay, are you going to address your letter?
Sure.
Well, if you're going to talk, I could spend 4 minutes reading this, but I don't know whether it's worth it. If you want me to read it, I will.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so essentially the letters to the board, I'll just summarize it. They talk about the variances, and they think that due to concerns regarding traffic safety and commercialization of the area, that they have concerns about the variances. They're concerned about the hours and the signage, all of which we'll hear from the Sergis. They suggest that the legal standards for a variance do not exist here, and then they cite the general laws as to what it requires for a variance. They indicate that the hours for the variance would be offensive to a residential neighborhood. They have concerns about the certain temporary signs that Elliott Physical Therapy has put up and whether those were permitted or not. And they think that they've been there for longer than 45 days and they want them to be removed. And the letter indicates that there's no sign at the exit of the driveway informing drivers that there is, quote, a no left turn, which is a requirement of the 2018 variance. And I actually remember that particular condition. And they request that this be done as soon as possible and without further delay. But I will read the people who have signed the letter, and so we'll have it as part of the record. It's Amy and Tom Caldwell of 103 St. Agatha Road in Milton, Tracy Dyke Redmond and Mark Redmond of 9 Ellsworth Road, Milton, Lisa and Michael Fahey, F-A-H-Y, of 109 St. Agatha Road, Milton, Monica Keene and Joseph Keene of Libby Road in Milton, George and Hillary Lambert of 36 St. Agatha Road in Milton, Allison and Patrick McGrath of 95 St. Agatha Road in Milton, Rosemary Perkins of 1717 St. Agatha Road in Milton, looks like Michaela and Brian Powers of 19 Andrews Street in Milton, and Laura and David Reese of St. Agatha Road in Milton, without a number. Michael and Jessica Sergi of 462 Adams Street in Milton, Martin and Kathleen Shields of 26 St. Agatha Road in Milton, Sean and Caitlin Spalding of 15 Andrews Street in Milton, Anna and Ben White of 24 St. Agatha Road in Milton, Tom and Annie Koskis of 23 St. Agatha Road in Milton. So we thank the Sergis and everyone who signed the letter, and we'll take that into evidence. We have a second letter of the 22nd by Jessica and I believe Michael Sergi, saying that in addition to the letter of the neighbors in opposition to this application, they want to express additional context for the opposition. Do you intend to go into this in your presentation, Ms. Sergi? Sure. Okay, then that's fine. So I won't read that, but she refers to an instance where one of a vehicle, a Nissan vehicle, was parked in their driveway with a sign on it that's Sergi Constructing, Inc., and there was a citation by the building inspector of that, and there was an application for a variance, and I think it was subsequently, there was an agreement reached, I think, on the enforcement action, but you can perhaps tell us about that. It's not referred to in the letter, and I don't want to draw inferences from the letter. It speaks for itself. We have a third letter, and this is a letter of January 11th, 2020, and it's to the Board of Appeals, and it's from John Zikowitz, Jr., the chair of the Milton Sign Review Committee, and it's copied to William Clark, the town planner, Ray Phil, the Milton Sign Review Committee member, Larry Johnson, the Sign Review Committee member, Paul Doherty, a Sign Review Committee, and Douglas, I think it's Seebeck, though it could be Sybeck, a Milton Sign Committee review member. And this letter says, at the request of the applicants, the Milton Sign Review Committee reviewed and discussed the sign proposal for the Elliott Physical Therapy located at 475 Adams Street, Milton, at our meeting on November 18, 2019. The applicant is a new commercial tenant at the property, and the letter indicates that they will be meeting with the Milton Board of Appeals as the signs for this commercial use require a variance. The applicant felt that it would be helpful for the sign committee to review the drawings and to provide comments and suggestions before they submit their formal applications. Mr. Zikowitz indicates there are 4 signs that are proposed for the building exterior at this location. The first sign is at the entrance to the driveway leading to the rear parking lot. It's a double-sided sign. I won't go into the details because I think Mrs. McGettrick is going to show us some pictures of the sign, and everyone can see that. There's a second sign located on the left front entrance off of Adams Street. It's 48 inches by 28 inches tall, displaying the name of the company. The third and fourth signs are located at the rear of the building. And the building, he suggests, may have been designed to have multiple tenants on the first floor, as the building has 2 glass entries off the parking lot. The applicant here is using the entire first floor so that the right-hand door would be utilized as their entrance. The glass doors are supposed to receive surface letters, reverse applied to the existing glass. The right-hand door will have the name of the company with the word entrance below the name. The left-hand door will have the company name with the word entrance and a directional arrow pointing to the right-hand door. The committee discusses this proposal. The 2 signs are located, in the opinion of the committee, at the front of the property, that they're appropriately signed for their location, and the sign materials will look good and will maintain their appearance with minimum maintenance. The 2 rear signs are minimal, and the applied letters to the glass doors are appropriate. The committee does not have any comments or suggestions and supports this sign application when it is presented to the board. The motion was to support this was seconded, and the committee voted 4-0 with 2 members absent in support of the application for variance. We appreciate, Mr. Zikowitz Jr. says we appreciate the applicant's request for our committee to assist in the review of this sign proposal for Elliott Physical Therapy. Sincerely, John Zikowitz Jr., Milton Sign Committee Chairman. So we thank Mr. Zikowitz and the other members of the Sign Committee for reviewing this application for the board. Will take it into evidence. And Mrs. McGettrick, I think with that long preamble, we're delighted to hear from you.
Great, thank you. And I am Mary McGettrick, and I represent the applicants. We have a little bit of additional information for you. Are these additional letters, or are they?
They're additional
Okay,
letters.
so we have additional letters. We have a copy for each of you, so those can all go up. Is it 3
originals
copies?
are on the top.
Okay.
In behind the letters, which are from Dr. Kimberly Hart from Hart Dental, the Milton Chamber of Commerce, and there was one that was emailed from Paul Travers. All of them are supporting the application, but the content you can read. We also, though, have provided you with photos of the building, because various issues come up when you come back in. Obviously, it's difficult. This is a recent decision. We're coming in to ask for sign variance and for some changes to hours. So we've also spent some time reviewing with some of the neighbors, particularly to the rear, whether they have any concerns and issues. And we took some photographs of the back to show you what the back of this building looks like at night. So that's what this first photograph is.
Let me stop you just one second, Marion. Mrs. Sergi, have you had a chance to see these materials?
No, I don't think so. So, well, this set can go.
Why don't we send one set over
Okay,
there?
perfect.
Why don't you take a look at these while this is taking place?
The building, as you know, or you may, well, so, and in addition to that, we have a petition in support of the application, which has a lot of signatures. You all have a copy of that, and I have one copy up here. So if you need an extra copy, we have another one.
Mr. Mullen.
I'm sorry? Yes, well, you have copies of it, yes. But you need a copy, right? Yeah, so let's give that copy to her. Okay. Okay,
I'm sorry.
so,
What is this?
where is it?
Those are, I think they were sent to the variance application.
That's a petition in support of the application.
With respect to the hours.
Yeah.
But not the sign.
No.
Does it relate to the
No, I
sign?
think it's just the hours,
Just the
yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about the sign first, but, you know, this is a two-part application, so.
Sure.
This is a use allowed by variance. It's in a residential district. It's just like the building across the street. In order to have any sign, a variance is required because in a residential district, signs, permanent commercial signs are not allowed. The other commercial buildings in town that have this status, a lot of them have some sorts of signs. It varies with each one. So this is the first time we've come in with a sign proposal, and that's because Elliott Physical Therapy is the first tenant in this building. And the land, yes, they've been in there for a few months, for not too long, a month or two?
Since October.
Since October. They did have some temporary banner signs up. I believe they've been removed. And they would not be something that would be like the signs that we are requesting or proposing. So what has happened is you had a fairly, I think, lengthy two-part hearing process, and the board issued a use variance, and there was no tenant identified at that time. The building was approved for 2 upstairs apartments and 2 downstairs commercial office spaces. And the physical therapy use is one of the types of uses that was allowed by the variance. So now,
Are they occupying the entire first floor?
they are occupying the entire first floor. I see that as advantageous in the sense that there is only one tenant. So if there are any issues of any sort that neighbors have, and that the owners of this business are very willing to talk to anybody and to try to resolve problems, and they've certainly tried to do that prior to the hearing, but will continue to do so. And I think they're known that way in the town. They run a very good business across the street, and they, you know, they'd like to work this out so that everyone is reasonably satisfied. There are a number of features of the signs that I'd like to point out, but again, it's a sign proposal, and if there are other suggestions or ideas, we'd certainly like to hear them. The main sign is a sign that will be just to the left of the right entrance driveway to this building. And clients of the physical therapy office are supposed to go into the driveway and park in back of the building. And since the tenants have been in there, they've been directing their clients to do that, and they've been monitoring the use. They haven't found that they don't have enough parking. There seems to be adequate parking, and their clients have been parking in the back of the building. After dark, in particular, but even during the day, to make sure that their customers know where they're supposed to go in to park, a sign is necessary. They need some kind of sign at this entrance. So this sign is a plain gray block. It has thin lettering that says Elliott Physical Therapy. It's white lettering. And then it has an arrow, and it says entrance. So the sign is two-sided, so
It's in here somewhere, sorry.
depending on which direction you're coming from, you should be able to see the sign and know that this is where you're supposed to enter to go into park for the building.
That one, right? That little one there, that's an image of it in the street. A mock-up, right? So that's the street.
Yeah, it's rather small, I know, but this is the design drawing of the sign.
All right.
But this shows you how big the sign is in relation to the building, and I think that's important as well. The other sign that they have in their proposal is a smaller sign, is this the one that's in the front? Under the-
That's inside the building, just directing
Okay,
our
so
patients.
where's the one that's,
So that should be maybe here. This sign,
Yeah,
just to
sorry.
the left of the door.
okay, so just to the left of there's a porch in the front of the building, and this sign is proposed to be just to the left of the front door on the porch, on the building. So there are two signs proposed for the front of the building in this application. And then, as you already heard the sign review committee describe, there is lettering on the doors in the back of the building directing patients to go into one of the doors and not to go into the other door, because there's only one office, only one client, one tenant now. They want their clients to go in through one of the doors.
And the tenants, the apartment tenants upstairs, they're accessed from the front of the building, or is there a separate entrance for them?
They have two entrances in the back of the building, but they don't go into the business at all. They just go directly up.
Okay, great.
They have their own entrance.
We have not toured the building.
Yeah.
Great.
So usually, well, there's a lot of issues, of course, with signs, as always. There is some lighting on this front sign, which would consist of internally lighting the narrow white lettering on the gray sign. And the proposal is to have that sign lighting come on after dark and have it be shut off after the business closes. So it wouldn't be on all night long, but it would be on while the business is open. There's a switch inside the building so that it's very easy to turn the light on and off on the sign. Or that's what the design is. That's what's proposed. There's no lighting.
And is that shown on the right-hand photograph, as if this is darkness, and that's what the sign shows?
Yes. It's minimal lighting, that's the way I would describe it. It's about the least you could have and have any lighting. There's no floodlight sign, shining back on the sign. The only thing that would show at night would be the letter Elliott
So it's
Physical Therapy.
internal lighting, is that? what it
Yes,
is?
right? Yes.
It is.
Yeah. There's no sign on there's no lighting in the sign would be on the building under the porch. And in the back, it's just door lettering. There's lighting in the back, and you have a picture of the lighting in the back of this building. So that's how you can see. And there's a light that would be shining out through the door.
Okay.
So that's that the sign company came up with as a proposal. It's not a gaudy light, or it's not very bright at all, but it is a sign, and they would like to be able to have this. I think they'd have to have something at the entrance, certainly, and because it has such minimal lighting, this seems the logical entrance sign to create. So we'll come back to the sign application, but I want to talk about the request for a change in hours and explain, why we're asking for it. At the time the use variance was granted, the first floor tenants were not identified. They weren't known. And now that they are, this physical therapy office has actually been in operation for years across the street at 480 Adams Street.
How many years, approximately?
How many years? 3 years.
3 years, okay.
And they have had these hours across the street, so they were hoping to have the same hours when they move their office. They're different from the ones that were allowed. The hours that are allowed in the application are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays, Sundays, and all holidays. So the hours that were allowed allow a business to be open every day. They're more limited, the hours are more limited on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. What the Elliott Physical Therapy would like to do is that they would like to have hours that would go to 8 p.m. at night, and they'd like to open 1 hour earlier in the morning at 7 a.m. rather than 8 a.m. They do open on Saturdays, but they don't stay open till 4. They stay open till 2. And on Saturday, they only have one physical therapist on duty. So it's a much more limited business use on Saturdays. It wouldn't be the same as the flow of people in traffic during the week. They are not open on Sunday. They are not open on major holidays. They are open on a number of other holidays that a lot of people still have to work on. So, the way people's work schedules work these days. So what we're proposing is for this business to not have Sunday hours, not have any holiday, not any major, and I listed the major holidays. They are New Year's, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Those holidays, they would not be open at all. They would never be open on Sunday. They would not be open after 2 p.m. on Saturday. But they would like to have more hours during the week at the end of the day and 1 hour earlier in the morning, because that's when people need variable hours to take advantage of physical therapy services. It depends on work schedules and everything else, but it would certainly make more sense to have these extended hours during the week. And they don't need a number of the other times that this variance would allow a business to be open. They are the only business in the building, so there would be nobody open on the days that they don't need these hours. So I guess what I'm saying is this is a proposal to modify the hours. We would be reducing the hours in some cases, and we would be increasing the number of hours during the weekdays. There will be use of the back parking lot at night by the residential tenants. So there's always going to be some use, some parking in the back parking lot. So it's not a question of having a totally vacant parking lot at night in back. I didn't represent them for the original application. I'm sure there was a lot of discussion. I'm sure the board very carefully considered the hours. But I think that the situation, if you don't have the tenant when you finish an application like this and you set hours, it's a little bit difficult because you don't know exactly, what's going to work and what isn't going to work. And I think in this case, this is a good business and this is a low impact type of use. It's quiet. People come in to get physical therapy. They're just quietly entering the building and leaving. They have one person at a time with one therapist, so they're not treating a lot of people. They don't have crowds of people in the office all the time. There is no...
Throughout the day, just one person with one therapist?
No, they have more than one therapist during the week, definitely. But on Saturday, they only have one therapist. The other thing is that, there's no increase in traffic being proposed here because the business already existed across the street with these hours. So the traffic is turning right instead of turning left, basically, or turning left instead of turning right, depending on where you're coming from. I think that as a proposal for a new tenant with this new building, it's one of the better tenancies that the landlord could have found, because he's using somebody who's just moving from across the street. We already know how the business operates. Elliott Physical Therapy has worked very well in the community, has a good reputation, and serves a lot of people who live in Milton. So, as far as the sign variance goes, we're of course willing to discuss options if there are issues with this sign. As far as the hours go, would very much like the opportunity to open for the hours that the business has normally operated in. If the board is concerned about what the impact might be, I would suggest they consider, whether they might issue something for a period of time and then have us come back to see if it's working. I don't know if that's a good option. I don't know if anyone else will be interested in that. But that summarizes the application. I think that, let me see whether, yeah, that's pretty much a summary of what I had in my comments in my letter. I'd be interested in hearing what the discussion is, and of course, we'll answer questions.
Okay, great. Mr. Mullen, do you want to be heard first?
Are these the hours that you're open across the street? I know you just alluded to that. Same hours?
Yes.
And are you asking to have these hours only run to this use, or to modify the variance so that these are the hours? So if they change again, you got to come back.
Well, the owner would prefer that it just be for this use. I don't know what's
The
possible.
owner is the
with
co-applicant.
Yes. I mean, we're perfectly happy with the hours being allowed only for this use, because that's the only reason we're asking for them. I don't know how that works in a variance, whether you can do that.
Well, I
mean,
think they're two different things, and that's why I asked the question,
Okay.
And would the sign only be lit after dusk? And would it be turned off when the business wasn't open?
Yes.
1 hour after close, isn't that what you said?
I thought it was on closing.
I
thought I read, or I don't,
I think
well,
that-
that's my question. Like,
After we met with the sign review committee or something, they said it should be 1 hour after closing, but, whatever the reason would be, why would you have it on an hour after closing? I think that must be what they did across the street.
It'd be on a timer or on a switch, so I mean,
We did do
It-
that across the street.
Yeah, but
He was
if-
closing up. He wanted the time to close up. That was Heart Dental,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, but
But here, that's not
it's
necessary.
not an issue for this business. If you think it should be when they close the doors, no one else is coming, there are no new customers.
Both sides
yeah.
of the sign are lit?
No, yeah, both sides, yes.
Who's the light on the east side of the sign? Is that for pedestrians?
Yes,
People walking from the square?
yes.
I don't have any further questions right now.
Okay, Mr. Ray.
how many therapists are working during the week?
During the week.
During the week, like inside there's one on Saturday, how many are in there during the?
So we have 9 therapists on staff at that location, but they stagger their hours. So we have some that come in the morning and then
Yep.
leave, they work their shift and then they leave. And then we have others that come at noon and work till 8.
Okay. And at the other location, you were operating at the same hours.
Yes.
So in that theory, the staffing levels at the old place and the new place are similar?
Well, we had only 1,500 square feet across the street. And so we have 2 more therapists because we have more space.
So slightly more, okay. So would it be right to say there's slightly more people coming in and out at the new facility because it's slightly larger than the old one? Okay.
but right now, there's not, because, obviously we're splitting between the two.
Yeah, they
We're
run across the
They
street.
run across the
They
street.
run across the street, which is
With-
not.
Not helpful for
In the
them.
morning, they treat, and then they run across the street,
Got
and
it.
then they
Okay.
go back.
Okay.
The nighttime people.
So we don't open till 8 at 4:75, and, they're over there, they're treating the patients at 7 in the morning, at 4:80 a.m.
Because you can go at 7 o'clock at the other
Yes.
place.
Yeah, there's no restriction on that
All right.
building.
And at the old building, is there any parking available over there?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
It was like across the street, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but you don't have your own dedicated lot as you do at the new place, is that right?
Because we're the only tenant.
Right, but my point is that as to the traffic impact, you've got, and the ever-present problem of East Milton parking. In the new location, you've got more dedicated parking space for your own business than you do at the other place.
Yes,
So
yes.
that could reasonably lower the impact. It would, maybe, more of your people would be able to park in your current lot than taking up spaces over at the old place.
Yes.
I know there was another, oh yeah, if, without the sign, right, if we don't allow a sign, then how will your patients, find the location?
So my fear is if we don't put the monument sign, as you know, it's a very congested area,
Yep.
is that if people miss the driveway, which is sort of easy to do,
I can see that.
they will take a right after our building
Yep.
through the neighborhood behind us, which we would prefer if they didn't do.
The residential
It's a
neighborhood
residential
back there.
neighborhood. And there's also a preschool, Adams Street Early Learning Center is back there. So we would prefer to people to take the right into the parking lot and leave our
Right.
neighbors alone.
So what I'm thinking is that you could say that having the sign will be a positive impact on traffic, because you won't have people who are coming to your business for the first time or the second time, or it's dark or whatever, they miss the turn, they have to somehow circulate through that East Milton maze that we've done millions of times over a lifetime, and potentially add additional orbits to be able to make to be able to get back in. So that could argue for a positive impact, again, to East Milton traffic, and having a well-identified, tasteful, small, ish sign, but enough to mark the entrance. Okay. I don't think I had any other questions, except to ask Mrs. McKettrick if she could speak to a moment what the statutory requirement for a variance and how that affects this particular case.
Well,
But
we're
is the
asking for a
s-
modification for the sign variance.
Yeah, I'm not for the hours, not for the
Yeah, it's
hours.
always
I'm
difficult.
talking about for the sign.
Yeah, we've had to do.
'Cause I know that
few
might be
of
a
these,
point.
And, a variance is supposed to be granted because of something, of unique characteristics of a lot,
Mm-hmm.
usually often topographical, something like that. There's a hardship element, but the unique characteristics of the lot are supposed to be part of the justification for a variance. The board has on many occasions granted variances that might be a little bit less than, that didn't necessarily have the topographical uniqueness. On the other hand, this is a different type of variance. I mean, we've already granted a use variance for the building.
Yep.
And now we have a somewhat anomalous situation of having to come back and ask for a variance for the sign, because the use has been allowed in a residential district. It's a
Yeah.
commercial use. So by granting the use variance, there's a contradiction in my view in saying there can't be any kind of identification or signage. On the other hand, this is different from a sign in the commercial district. We have rules for that, we follow the rules. People are trying to follow them now in their applications. You have to look at all the conditions that may affect the neighbors who have to look at the sign. You have to look at safety, you have to consider is there a good reason, a very strong justification in terms of safety and traffic for permitting the sign. There has to be an overriding reason that allows this exception even though it's a residential district. I think that, first of all, this location is facing an extremely busy street. It faces the business district. It faces another commercial business. It's next to a commercial business. It's next to the post office. There's a lot of commercial activity. That doesn't mean you should just go ahead and cover the building with signs. The whole point of building this nicely designed building was to make it attractive and to make it not be an eyesore or to diminish the value of the residential area around it. So I think a sign needs to be very carefully designed. I think that some kind of sign is necessary to direct traffic into that driveway, but that any sign relief that's granted should take into consideration the residential setting in the back and the fact that there's a view across the street. And so it should be more limited than you might otherwise be willing to allow. These signs are not as big as would be allowed in a commercial district. There'd probably be a lot more lighting on a sign allowed in a commercial district. But I think the very limited time during which the lettering would be lighted on this sign is just to address a safety issue. You have to be able to see where the entrance is, and you need to be able to get people into the driveway and into the back.
I would note on that point that your closing hours, if we were to grant the extension, the latest closing hour, Monday to Thursday, is 8 p.m. For many months of the year, it's still light. Sunset after 7:30, half an hour of twilight you're looking at. The functional times when that sign would be illuminated in the dark, if it was turned off by 8 o'clock on 4 nights a week, would be fairly limited. It's really a maximum of three and a half hours a day, really. But just my rough calculation. I have no more further questions, thank you.
Okay, I've got one question for Mrs. McKittrick. Could you compare the signage for the subject building here with the signage for the building across the street? And is that a relevant consideration for us?
Well, it's much less, I will say that. There's a sign in front of the building across the street that lists the businesses. Are you on that sign? Yeah. So that's a sign. It has internal lighting, I believe. Is it internal or is it a light shining on it?
Just a placard
It's not lit.
that was fairly recent that they put up on that property at
Okay.
480.
So there isn't lighting in that sign. There are internally lit signs for the bank on at the front, the right side, and the back side, and there are a number of them. And there's a small sign for Heart Dental in one of the windows on the left side of the building. So there's quite a lot of lit signage across the street. That building is entirely commercial. This one has residences on the upper floors. It's about as minimal, I think, as you could have and still have a sign. Well, I mean, it's a matter of opinion, I suppose. But certainly the intention here was not to replicate what's across the street. And we've all heard the discussion about those signs, and we know how difficult it was to try to get any additional signs over there. We know the neighbors are concerned about internal lighting on signs. They don't want signs that look garish and look terribly commercial. So this was an effort to create a sign that was very inconspicuous, but still served its purpose of showing where the entrance to the building is and identifying the commercial tenant.
Okay, well, I don't have any further questions. Jeffrey? Nick?
No,
Do you
I'm
have anything
fine,
else you'd
thank
like
you.
to add?
I would add the sign to the left of the front door, that front entrance only goes into our space. So if people are walking and they want to come up the front porch, they can enter. And then it shows when they enter, this sign is on the internal wall of our office and just directs people to the front desk, which was in the back of the building. So that just, if, we do have students that come and they walk from school, and so just to let them know they can come up through that front door. They don't have to go through the back parking lot.
Okay.
They can come right from the sidewalk.
Okay, great. Mrs. Sergi, do you want to be heard at this time?
Marion, did you want these sign pictures?
I'll leave
You
them
can
here
look
for
at
now.
I'm sorry, is it Mr. Sergi? Do you want to come up here? You can certainly feel free. You don't have to sit back, aren't being isolated here. Why don't you introduce yourself, then we're delighted to hear from you.
Okay, Jessica Sergi, 462 Adams Street. There are two letters here that were submitted that you discussed, so I guess I'll go through those first and then we can talk. The first letter was signed by several neighbors and outlines everyone's opposition to both of the variances. It outlines the standard that you guys have discussed, that a variance can only be granted if the Board of Appeals specifically finds that the circumstances relating to the soil and shape and topography of the land and not generally affecting the zoning district allows it to be so.
Can I stop you there?
I'm sorry?
You're reading from the statute, which is the general variance statute.
Right.
In the standards.
Correct.
Do you think that statute, as you've read it, applies to this particular location with the specific characteristics of the buildings that are present at or about this, the applicant's building?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, so why wouldn't they?
Because if there's a whole series of cases, and I thought we cited them in our first use variance for the building, that tend to say that if even though it's in a residential zone, and it's probably been in a residential zone since 1938, the uses have changed in that residential zone with the expressway and the construction of the office building, and now the construction of this building, and that if it's not essentially a residential neighborhood, the standard, the strict standard of variance is not the standard that's applied. It's a far more discretionary standard, even though a variance is still required. And there must be 10 cases that deal with that issue. And
I don't recall them being cited in the.
Well, they may not have been. They certainly were mentioned. I know that. But I just wanted to know, because part of the issue here is one of discretion. What does the law require? And when I read your article, your letters, all of your letters are absolutist in the sense that here's what the statute says, and you have to meet each and every one of those standards with the strictness of the variance law, and that's why I wanted to just see.
Yeah,
see what
and
you
I
felt.
also think that it applies because it applied.
Just gonna want to read the letter.
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. It also applied to the variance that we requested for the van. So if that standard was different for,
No, because that's not true at all, because I sat in that particular hearing, and there was absolutely no doubt that when you're on the edge of the residential district, which is around you in the back of the church and on the side of the church, the whole essence of it was, I'll say to the north of you, but it may not be north, across the expressway is distinctly commercial, and that's part of the reason that the building inspector cited for a violation, that it was like one of the neighbors in a residential neighborhood putting a truck there, as opposed to in a neighborhood that's more proximate, like Mr. Jubinville. Mr. Jubinville's got a big sign, it's as big as that clock.
right.
And he's living in there. And you say that's a residential neighborhood? Mr. Jubinville's property is no more of a neighborhood property than either of these two buildings, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. But it's not inherently in the middle of an intense neighborhood district, which I think is south of you and surrounding the church.
It's across the street.
Right.
It is across the street.
Not like,
It's across from the
It's not a
post
mile
office.
away.
It's across from the post office.
Right,
Do you
but-
think there's a difference between the area around the existing office building? Do you think that's a residential neighborhood?
So, yes, but we're next door to that.
I know you are,
And
but
so
you're
if
across the street.
But if you're saying that this building, 475, and then there's a church across the street from us.
Yeah,
and
you're
then
not
there's
across
the-
from 475.
We're diagonal, and across from us is a church,
And across from the roadway.
across from,
The main exit from
Wood Street Extension.
the Wood Street Extension.
so you're saying Wood Street Extension cuts us off, so there's a different
No,
standard?
but I say you can't, I don't think you can say legitimately that you're in the middle of an intense industrial, or an intense residential neighborhood when you must have 5,000 cars a day that go by your house.
Okay, so Then if,
That's not a residential neighborhood, that's a...
But if that's the
you're on
case,
border.
then-
You're on the border of the commercial district that has started from East Milton Square and has emigrated down.
so if that's the case, then then what was the problem with having the van parked there, for example?
Well, I think your van, which you want to personalize here, I thought that was
No, I'm trying to-
worked out. You admitted you can't have the van there with the signs on it in the residential neighborhood.
Right, but then we asked for a variance, which was denied,
Right, but you were given permission to park the car.
without
back-
signage.
Without signage and to the rear of the property where it couldn't be seen.
Right, but then across the street, a sign with lights is being requested.
Right, but it's
Right.
not in the residential neighborhood.
It's in a residential zone.
That's not the question.
Well,
That's,
it's
not
a
the
zoning
question.
question, and it's,
it's a zoning question, and I'm going to suggest to you, and I say this most respectfully, you haven't read the case law,
okay.
okay? But why don't you go on with your presentation?
So,
Great.
which topic would you like me to?
Anything you want to say? I think, what do you think about the signage? Well, Mrs. McGettrick seems to indicate that the signage that she's trying to offer here is tasteful and is in keeping with the neighborhood. Is there anything about the signage that you request would
I'm just seeing
to
the
be
signage.
modified?
We went and saw it quickly, but I haven't really looked at it. I think that the whole premise of having signage is unnecessary and a violation.
Unnecessary.
Yes,
Okay.
because they are
You were,
across.
you were objecting to Dr. Hart's sign on the other building, weren't you?
I was,
when he was
because
asked-
it shines into our house, correct. But then at the end of the day, it happened. So
No, the variance was granted, and you didn't oppose it.
I opposed it.
You opposed it in court?
Yeah, I wrote a letter in opposition.
Oh, that's here, but you didn't appeal that to.
Oh, no, I didn't appeal it, no. No.
And I thought at the end of that hearing, you really were assenting to his application,
I
weren't
was,
you? Because he was a very nice man, he tried to make
oh, he was a very nice
accommodation
man,
with
yes,
you.
yes. And these are very nice people, too. I spoke with Patty, she's great. This has nothing to do with the actual businesses.
Do you think the signs, the lighted sign from this building is going to shine into your house?
I think that already with the business being there, we see it. It's because most of the time, and they
Do you
do
see
have
the sign
shades
for
now.
Did they see the sign for the church across the street?
Which church?
I don't know. It's
No,
a-
no, because
the,
it just has
Burgess-
one, it has one
Burgess.
floodlight flashing on it sometimes,
Right.
but no.
Can you see that?
I mean, you can if you look.
What I'm trying to ask you,
Right.
I'm trying to say, is there any modification to the signage which would satisfy you?
Maybe, and it's not just I mean, this letter is from all of the residents, so I wouldn't feel, all of the neighbors, I wouldn't feel
The
comfortable here
application's
saying.
been pending for over a month, hasn't it?
I'm not sure when it, December
It
9th,
has to
so
be, because we
yes. So I
published
don't
for
know when
3
we
weeks.
received notice, I'm not sure. So,
So you're not able to discuss the signage?
I'm not able
whether
to,
there's
I
any
think,
modification
I think
for
that
it?
it makes sense if we had a meeting with the neighbors and we talked about it, and I'm sure there could be a resolution, but that hasn't happened. And it sounds like
Did you request a meeting with Mrs. McGettrick?
well, it was just stated, and when I spoke with Patty earlier, she said she was amenable to that.
Okay. So the sign issue was up in the air. Well, do you want to talk about the hours?
Yeah, the hours, so when we were here before for the use variance, the reason why the hours were set the way they were, and I haven't looked back at the old application, but I think it was based on Jubenville's hours that were approved, and also that building.
Okay.
What had previously been approved for that building.
For that building, how about the post office hours? Are they the same as the building, the big building? I don't remember the address of it. With where Dr. Hart is.
480, no, I don't, you guys would know the hours there.
There's no restriction on that building for hours.
Okay. So what do you say about the hours?
Well, I think the concern of the neighbors is that the increase in hours would put would put more stress on the roadway. And those are times where the children, like all the bus stops, I have it in here.
No, but if they want the same hours as the building that they're presently in, how does it increase
Well, but
burden of
as
the
we heard,
traffic
so
on the
the
neighborhood.
plan is, from what I understand, is that they would no longer be in 480, and they have a larger space in 475.
Right.
So there would be more work going on there, more business going on at 475, which would increase the traffic, because it's a bigger space, so there'd be more
Doesn't
therapists.
it decrease the visibility of the automobiles if there's plenty of parking spaces to the rear?
I'm not sure I
Isn't
understand.
it better for the neighborhood if the cars are parked to the rear rather than in the parking lot of 480 or Dr.?
Yeah, but I don't know how, so I'm also curious how there's enough parking spots with the tenants plus the 9 therapists. I know they stagger, plus clients. 480 has a much larger parking space, so I think that has helped. But they won't have access to that, I assume, after they fully move over.
Okay. So what do you say about the hours? What's your position on the hours?
The position of the neighbors is that they are opposed to it.
Okay.
And again, that may be
And-
something that
And why
can
are
be
they
discussed.
opposed to it exactly?
Because of safety, because of parking.
Do you want to talk about safety? What evidence do you have that it's going to be a more unsafe environment?
Well, I think it's just going to add more traffic to the area, which is necessarily
You know how many
problematic.
more cars are going to be added?
I don't, no. But I assume more since it's a larger space.
Okay. Mr. Gray, do you have any more questions?
No, I don't, I guess, no.
Okay. Why don't you continue, Mrs. Sergi, with your presentation?
Let me just look where we were. So for the sign variance, as you know, the bylaws state that there cannot be any permanent sign in a residentially zoned district. And
Do you
the
know how
reason
many
why-
signs exist in residential districts in
No.
Milton?
How many?
They're all over the place.
Okay.
If it's inherently a commercial district, and we know a lot of doctors who have little signs in there in the residential district.
Okay.
So it's just because you're not supposed to have signs because they're technically prohibited by the bylaw doesn't prevent this board from granting the use of signs, and we've done it for years and done it all over the market, all over the town of Milton. How about, I don't know what to say. Why don't you continue with you?
One other point that was in the letter was the 1987 variance for this property specifically stated that the grounds and landscaping had to be maintained to the end that the premises continue to have the outward appearance of a residential property. And that struck with me because when we were here previously, that was why this building looks how it looks.
Right. Don't you think it worked out nicely? Everyone that I talk with says the building is great.
Right, but if signs are added, it will lose the residential look.
Even signs like they've been proposing here.
Yes.
Okay?
Can I ask a question about the safety aspect of it? What do you think, about the point I was asking earlier of Mrs. McKettrick, if the sign is absent,
Right.
you have no sign, you get your wish, there's no sign labeling this business at all.
Right.
Now you've got, and we don't change the hours. Hours are the same as been granted, and they're working, and they hire, however many people they hire to do it. Now you've got, people trying to find the location of this business who are coming in for physical therapy. They need it for a period of time, and then they don't need it anymore. So there's going to be new people coming all the time, is my point. They have no way of knowing where that business is exactly. So what is, if they miss it, right? They can't find the entrance. They're going to have to, based on the fact that it's one-way traffic, they're going to have to either make another orbit of the square and come back around, back over the expressway, or they're going to have to make a right turn through the residential neighborhood that's behind that building
Right.
and come around again. Wouldn't that,
Well,
how would, help me out, because I'm trying to weigh the safety aspect of your argument versus the safety aspect of trying to get the cars that are trying to locate this business, which is being allowed, off the street as quickly as possible and into a parking lot. And without a sign, I'm having trouble understanding how that can be done as safely.
And
Because
maybe-
they're not going to see it, right?
but
So
when they-
how does that work?
Couldn't there be a sign that just had the address, 475 Adams? Or have, I mean, and the other issue is that across the street, there
I'm
is no
looking for
sign.
Elliott Physical Therapy.
So across, the
In a sea of, I've driven up that street a million times, as we all have, right? And I'm approaching it, and I've got commercial property on the one side, I've got the church and the whatever on the other side, and I'm trying to find the business that is now there. And there's this new gray building that I've seen go up. I don't know what's in there. How is a customer to locate the business if there's no sign on it in a reasonable manner, in a quick
so
manner?
there are two things. One is the use variance that was allowed for this building. It specifically said that the leases of any tenant in the commercial property had to inform their clients or customers.
Fine, on
how to
day
get
one,
there.
though, they don't know that, so.
Well, no, but when they have a new client,
Yeah.
when they call and say, okay, make the appointment, the prior use variance says that the tenant is supposed to say, okay, and this is how you're supposed to get here. Because it's a one-way, there was
they-
concern at the time
Yes.
about how to get there.
Fine, and so how are they supposed to communicate that efficiently to someone who's now trying to find it? You're supposed to email them a picture of the building, and they can drive by and see the picture and then know?
What's the size of the sign across the street now?
I have no idea.
They don't have a sign across the street now.
I don't know.
is
All
the
I know is
point.
that this seems to me to be a small sign
Mm-hmm.
that will improve the people trying to find the business in in an efficient manner,
Mm-hmm.
that it would be more likely to get them off the street into the parking lot with the additional spaces that are, now provided, that might be an improvement to the safety. You
Okay.
see what I'm saying?
I hear what you're
So
saying.
I'm trying to balance that against what you're asking us to do, which is to deny them and a sign for their business and deny the rest of the town or people who are using this business to an easy way of finding it,
Well, I also wonder, I mean, there is no sign for them currently across the street. So if they are currently going to Elliott Physical Therapy and they say, we're at 480 Adams Street, people are finding it. So I don't know why moving across the street necessitates a sign.
because they're not in the same location that they were in before.
But then you just say to your current clients, we're across the street in the new gray building.
We've been there since October.
Clients are turning
Haven't
over
had
all
any
the
issues
time.
since
I need okay.
Yeah, I understand what you're
And so
saying.
now I'm concerned that we're going to make it worse by not putting the sign up. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I can talk to my fellow members when we get to the discussion portion, but my current thinking is, I don't know how they could design a sign that was smaller and more limited to accomplish the job of identifying the place for their customers and getting the cars off the street into the parking lot quickly and safely, so they don't keep making orbits of the place while the kids are waiting at the bus stop.
Okay.
That's what I'm worried about, okay? So, I'm just trying to understand how it impacts safety to put the sign there. In my thinking, it hurts safety not to have the sign, but so I guess that's all I have to say on that point, I guess. I mean, but I'm happy to hear what more I can put down,
Okay.
okay?
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. The only other thing I would say is about the no left turn sign, which,
Yeah, I saw that in it. I agree with you.
I'm surprised, I was just looking at the decision. I don't see that in the decision.
what?
The no
The
left
no
turns?
left-
It's in the requirements of I saw it when I was looking at it, I remember, I don't have it. But it
Okay,
was- it
'cause
was
that-
in-
that's something
It was in bullet, item 3 of, condition 3, it was the first bullet, or one of the bullets, right? Something like that.
So, do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Mrs. McGetrick, do you want to address Ms. Sergi's concerns?
So, well, the sign was designed to match the monument sign that's across the street, not the directory sign. It's smaller than the directory sign. That's why I said this sign was designed to be pretty much the smallest it could be and still be visible. So across the street, that building was permitted to have that monument sign that says Blue Hill Bank. Is that what it
It
says?
said Blue Hill Bank, but now they had to change over all that stuff to Rock on
I
Trust.
think it actually says drive-through 24 hours or something.
Well, whatever,
Yeah.
you know. Just to give you an idea of where the size of the sign came from, that's where it came from.
I also saw it on the hospice sign, and I thought it was tasteful, but marked the entrance, so at Route 28. So we just tried to mimic signs that we saw throughout town that we liked.
Yeah, that's correct. That building has more signs, but as far as the sign goes, you do need a way to direct people into the driveway and into the back of the building. The fact that the building has its own parking is a tremendous feature, given how little parking many of the buildings in this area have. It's quite inconspicuous in that it's a soft gray color, you know, it doesn't stand out in any way. You could see the lettering because the lettering's white. At night, you would see it after dark because the lettering would be internally lit. And then the whole thing will go off after the business closes and you won't see anything at all. I had a couple of comments because the signs and the hours are somehow related here. On the hours, I just want to emphasize, we are asking for more hours to be open during the week. But we are asking not to be open on Sunday and not to be open on certain holidays. The current permit allows this business, there could be two businesses in this building, and they could be open from 4 to 8 on Sunday and 4 to 8 on every holiday. And from the standpoint of the neighborhood, in terms of traffic impact and busyness and commercial appearance, it is an improvement to not have the building be used on Sunday, to not have it be used on major holidays. And it's a pretty conventional set of hours to allow the business to be open until 8 o'clock. And I would say again, there's 500 square feet more space here than the therapy office occupies across the street. We're not talking about doubling the number of therapists at any given time. We're not talking about doubling the number of customers or of clients coming to the business. There's a slight increase because they probably have one more therapist in each
500 more
shift.
square feet, really, you
Okay.
can't
But-
put in more
but-
therapists.
Yeah.
First of all, they've made the change, the tenants in this building, the choice here is, do they have, evening hours across the street and early morning hours across the street and the rest of their hours here? It's the same customers that are going to be driving to the buildings, the same clients, or do they put them all in one building, which is more efficient and just much safer certainly for everybody?
For our staff.
In terms of finding the building, it's different getting into this building. The other building has signs all over. And there's now a huge 480 number sign on the side of the building as well that's been added. There's nothing on this building. The reason you can see it up until now has been because they did have temporary banners saying that they were open now and they were the new business in the building. And those have been taken down because they're just temporary signs. I haven't heard a suggestion for what could be less than what we've proposed, and I honestly don't know what could be less unless you have suggestions, because we'd certainly like to do the least we can and still serve the purpose that a sign would, which is to direct clients and customers into the proper entrance, to tell them where the business is, and to avoid people driving around looking for the business because they can't figure out exactly where they're supposed to go in or which building it's in.
It was tricky in the other building. We have to tell people in the Blue Hill Bank building that was the identifying feature of the thing. And still people would have trouble. And it's the reason why Dr. Hart came in, looking for a sign is, he felt that his clientele, again, couldn't find him.
Does anybody have any further questions of Mrs. McKettrick? Okay, let's move on in the hearing. We've heard from Mrs. Surgery. Is there anybody else present here who wishes to be heard in support of these variance applications? And the answer is no. Is there anybody else here who would like to ask questions or otherwise speak in opposition to this application for variances and modification of the hours in the variance? And the answer to that is no. Mrs. McGettrick, let me ask you this. Prior to seeking this application for variance, did you have meetings with the neighbors at all and discuss these issues with them?
Patty can address that.
Marion sent the letters, and I did call both Jessica and the neighbor behind us, Kristen Stock, and I said that I'm willing to meet with anyone, and, you know, we live here in town, and we want the neighbors to be happy, and we want to work with them, and I think the no left-hand turnout of that, I think it's a really good idea, and we will make sure that happens. And I assured Kristen that if the trees don't make it through the winter, that we'll work with the landlord to make sure that, you know, that we keep the property looking nice. But I did offer to meet with everyone.
Okay, because what I was surprised at, we received these letters from Attorney Sergi and the neighbors. I think it was at 12 o'clock today.
Oh, it was today?
No, it was today.
Oh.
It wasn't yesterday.
No, it was
Okay.
today, and it was at 12:30 or something like that. They came in out of the blue, signed by 13 or 14 neighbors. And we thanked them for participating in the hearing, but it would have been wonderful if they had been submitted 10 days in advance or 5 days in advance. And I had the impression, and I may be dead wrong, but I had the impression of hearing Mrs. Sergi, and she seemed to wanted her appearance here in these letters of objections to institute some type of a negotiation or a meeting of the parties when this is the time of the hearing. If there was supposed to be, if they wanted a meeting with the applicants, they had 30 days to have that meeting. If they wanted to discuss hours, they could have come in and talked to you. They could have talked to Mrs. McGettrick. They did nothing but sent a letter. And I'm going to think that most of these people who signed this letter on St. Agatha Road, they can't even see the building. They're in that densely residential area. So I don't want to make for misery. I mean, you are nice people, and you're trying to be very flexible. We're here to vote on this application and not to have mediation sessions, and if there are to be mediation sessions, we'd like to know about it in advance, then we wouldn't have the meeting. So we're kind of twixt in between. So, and the other people who are seeking the relief, and I just don't know what to say. I think what I want to just ask you, and if you want to talk with your clients, I'll give you a few minutes. Do you want to proceed with this hearing and we'll vote on this now? Or do you want to try to meet with Mrs. Sergi and see if you can reach an agreement on some of these issues? I don't want to jam a decision down anyone's throat and then have everyone mad. But on the other hand, those types of meetings should have taken place long ago. Mrs. McGettrick is one of the most flexible lawyers I've ever seen. She'll meet with anybody at any time. If you just say, can we have lunch over the signage? But apparently that didn't happen here. But they appear at noontime today, the day of the hearing, with all of these letters and all of these legal objections. And when we ask, well, how about making modifications to the sign that are reasonable? I think Mrs. Sergi's suggestion was she had to talk to the neighbors, and she didn't have any authority to do that, and she had no willingness to discuss the hours. Presumably she wants to talk to the neighbors. I don't know whether they're her clients or just the neighbors about all of this. And I guess my question to you is, do you want to talk to the neighbors and delay this? Or have it voted on? And with that in mind, I'm going to tell you something, because I thought that this hearing was going to be a very contested hearing and a very difficult hearing. And maybe it was. I hope it wasn't. But I did ask Ms. Sutton that if we had to continue this hearing to another date, when would that be? And regretfully, it's April at the earliest. So, do you want to take a couple of minutes and talk with your
Well,
clients?
sure, yeah.
Or do you know what you want to do?
Well, I should give him the
I think you
opportunity. I
should
don't
too. So
know.
we're going to take a recess here for just 5 minutes,
Okay, thank you.
and then you can decide how you want to proceed, okay? So we're in recess for 5 minutes. No, you're on the mics. I think we're back on the record, and I guess my question, Mrs. McEttrick, is how do you and your clients wish to proceed?
We'd like to proceed. We'd like to hear what the members think. I would ask for the opportunity to withdraw the application if you don't have the votes and support, and I don't know how, maybe you should get a sense of the board or something like that. But let me just explain why I'm asking for that. Both issues, both the sign issue, but and particularly the issue of hours, they definitely are creating problems at the moment because this business is on both sides of the street. It's not a particularly safe situation for their employees going back and forth. And so it was important to bring this application to you now, even though it's relatively soon after you granted the original variance. Now that, there is a tenant in the building. And I felt it was a reasonable application because we were not proposing just to add hours. We were proposing to reduce hours and add hours depending on what days you're talking about. And I thought the days that we didn't want to be open, the weekend days and the holidays, were days when the neighborhood would be happy to see that we weren't going to be open. The other days are days when there's a lot of traffic on the street anyway. There's plenty going on in East Milton Square up until 8 o'clock at night. And there are businesses that are open all over the place. So it didn't seem to me that this would be any greater impact on the neighborhood to ask for these changed hours. As far as the sign is concerned, again, we need some kind of sign. There's a safety issue. It's not going to go away. And so I guess I'd ask the board to, we'd like you to make a decision tonight. I will say that, if issues come up, we're willing, but we were willing to meet with neighbors before the hearing. We're willing to meet with neighbors after the hearing. If you make a decision and people are still unhappy, we're still willing to meet and talk and see if there's anything we can do to make everybody feel happier. I think the proof is going to be in the operation. I don't think this is going to create a problem. I don't think the changed hours will create a problem. And I think the sign is, is about as inconspicuous as it could be and still have a sign. So what else could we propose? I mean, I don't know what to go to. I don't think it will be safe to have, I don't believe it's safe to have no sign at all, and I think it's unreasonable to expect a business to be located here and not have something saying that this is where the business is. So,
Okay, so
anyway,
why don't we
we
do
are
it?
asking you to go ahead and deliberate. I don't, usually you close the hearing and deliberate. I don't know that you might be willing to discuss and discuss amongst yourselves. I think we'd like the opportunity to withdraw the application if you're not going to support it, because that way we don't have a 2-year.
Or we'd give you that opportunity
Okay,
in
thank
any
you.
event. Nobody's going to have a quickie decision before you can
All right.
exercise your legal rights. But I think what you're suggesting is fair. So, does anyone object to? So why don't we close the evidence at the hearing? I think I've said that. We have all of the evidence in there. We can reopen it at some time in the future if we need to. And why don't we discuss this, and maybe it'll make some sense as to the best way for everyone to proceed, both legally, socially, neighborly, or whatever. Okay? Mr. Mullen, do you want to be heard first?
Sure. So I sat on the Hart sign and on this one. I think you did too, John.
Yes, I did.
The thing about these properties that is different than all the other properties in the town, maybe with the exception of the village, is even though they're in a residential district, it's really been commercial since even before the expressway got built. And we know that from the variance that was granted across the street, which actually says that. And that went a lot into the Hart property variance. Now, this building is different because this building was in bad condition. I actually thought we could maybe make a run at saving that building before we started that hearing, and it became obvious we weren't able to save the building. Probably wasn't, due respect, worth saving, maybe, But, it's buildings like that that make, character and that, everybody likes and, makes towns like this. And, we're losing some of that in Boston, and that's sad. But it is what it is. I think the building came out quite nicely, actually. Nicer than I thought it was going to come out. I think it actually looks better than the renderings, as I recall. I looked at it the other day. I'm getting to my point. I'm just
No, you take your
setting it
time.
up.
This is-
Yeah.
This is very helpful.
Let's see. I think we're talking about an amendment to the variance, though. I don't think this is going to sit on top of the variance and be supplemental information, because I don't think the owner can have it both ways. You can't argue on the one hand that the hours are better, and in some ways they are, and yet have this run with the land and not, it is what it is. But therefore, I think one business is better than two. And I think that's a big deal here. And if what I'm hearing is we've got one business that needs these signs for one business and the signs have been set up, I think that's a much better outcome in a lot of ways than two businesses. Because two businesses would be double the signs, for example. I also think inherent in our granting of the commercial use of the property, there needs to be a sign.
Yeah, that's what I was
Some
gonna say.
kind of sign. And I think the difference between the building across the street and this building is, first of all, that building doesn't look like a house. It looks like a big brick office building, because that's what it is. It's also been there a long time, and my guess is most people who go there have a sense of where they're going. To your point, I suppose the Blue Hills Bank or Rockland Trust, whatever it is now, is a real modifier. Now, we talked about that too, because, of course, if you miss the exit, so to speak, you have to go around the block, and sometimes going around that block could take 45 minutes, I know. So I think inherent in the situation is that there needs to be signage. I also agree the signage is kind of nice. I didn't think about it being similar to the hospice, but I guess now that you say that, I can see that. I also think that the Milton Sign Committee, having weighed in on, even though they're not obligated to do so under the bylaw, is good, because that gives us good guidance. I know John Zinkowitz, he's an extremely thoughtful architect, so I trust his judgment. So with all that, assuming that we're talking about modifying the variance, changing it to one business, modifying the hours so that the total number of hours are less. I mean, I think in this location, even with the earlier start, the traffic's really picking up at 6 a.m. and around the expressway. I'm not sure it may be a big issue for your business. I don't know that that's a big issue for the traffic on Adams Street. And I don't know how many people you have, and maybe that's important, but it can't add measurably to the traffic. So what you basically have is a property or an area that's zoned residential, because it's zoned residential, because that's the way the town is. But it really has felt like a commercial property, increasingly commercial. And I understand that that's objectionable to Mrs. Sergi, but I do agree with John in that it's different than this property, even though it's in close proximity. And that's due to historical characteristics, and perhaps we've exacerbated that by taking the red building down, but replacing it with, I think, universally thought of as a nicer building. So assuming that we can make a decision consistent, and I want to build in John Zenkowicz's letter, have this amend the underlying variance that we granted. And one other thing, I think there's a little value in in meeting with the neighbors. This is not just one person we're talking about. And I wonder if we couldn't require the applicant to meet with the neighbors and to modify the signs and to report back to the board. To the extent there's agreed upon modifications, those could be incorporated into the decision. It could only better the application, lessen the impact, no substantial detriment to the neighborhood, et cetera. But when 7, 8, 9, 10, in this case 12 neighbors, and I know some live on St. Agatha, but not all of them, I think it's worthy, and I heard a willingness of you, the applicants, to do that. I'd like to put that on the table as well. But with those, I'd vote to support it. A long way of saying I'd vote to support it.
Okay. Mr. Gray?
I second Mr. Mullen's comments. Took most of my material. as usual.
Sorry, Nick.
It's all right. I would, I keep coming back to the fact that, I would just second the idea that I think a sign is necessary. I think a sign is implicit in the granting of the previous use variance that we gave. That your point about there being one business instead of two, and therefore one sign instead of two, is well taken. And having looked at the design of the sign, it's hard for me to imagine, as Mrs. McKettrick has pointed out, a sign that would be a lower visual impact and still meet the requirements of getting the cars off the street and into the parking lot efficiently and safely. As far as the hours go, since it's operating across the street with the same hours, it seems hard to imagine that the impact to East Milton traffic would be anything other than de minimis, if at all. So for those reasons, I would tend to vote in support of the granting of the variances, or the modification of the variance.
Well, I think that my colleagues have put it well. My view is that the building is a 10 strike as to compared to what was there. It was an embarrassment to the town. It was an embarrassment to the business district, even though it's in a residential district. I think it's tasteful. I think it's minimalist. I think the planning board was great in working with the applicant. I think Mrs. Tugayas in particular spent a lot of time making sure that building was well designed and that it was shaped and it was colored in such a way as to minimize its impact on the residential district and on the business district that it is. Jeff said it exactly right. This Southeast Expressway, whenever it came in, and it had been 40 years ago, chopped off that section of Milton, and it has become a commercial district. In the cases, which I did not bring with me, do indicate that if you have that circumstance, the SJC and the appeals court can take into consideration that fact and not impose the rigorous standards of variance, and it tends to come out more like a special permit, but in variance language, because you have that interplay between how is the residents, how are they adversely affected when the whole area is commercial, and particularly we have this big 480 or whatever it is, that huge office building that's been there for years and years and years, with signs all over the place, and you have this minimalist property that looks like a house, and you say they shouldn't have signs. I mean, that's crazy. It's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to the applicants. And I had the impression, and I believe that the signs here are really tasteful. I think they fit in. I'm not an architect. I don't design signs. You didn't bring the sign people in, but I think they tell you they designed those signs to be consistent with the architecture of the building and the usage. So, I mean, I kind of had the impression that and I may be wrong, that while Miss Sergi was here to object to everything, because that's what she says in her letter, and that's what the 10 or 12 neighbors expected her to do. I assume they saw this letter before they signed on to it. And they're not here, and she didn't have the opportunity to let them see the signs. Maybe some of those people that wrote the letter didn't even see these signs. I don't know whether they did or they didn't. We just don't know. My impression was she objected more to the hours than the signs, even though she didn't feel that she had authority. As I guess she's their lawyer. I think she is. It's not a legal stationery, but she is a lawyer and a good one. I think she felt that she didn't have any power or authority to agree to the signage because she didn't have a chance to talk to her clients and put her in a bad position in a sense. And I think that happened for a lot of reasons, but one of them is filing letters on the day of the hearing. It doesn't augur well for a successful hearing. But my thought was that she had more objections to the hours and less objections to the signs. My guess is, and you don't have to agree or disagree with me, that the applicants here are more interested in the signage than they are right now for the hours. And so that's why we gave you the timeout, in the sense that I would be prepared to vote the variances, because I don't think that's a close question at all for the sign or the signage, the whole signage package. I think it's wonderful and it's tasteful and it's going to upset nobody. And I agree with Nick that it's going to actually promote safety and promote your business, and you're investing a lot of money in this venture. I am not going to get involved in what the rent is there and what the rent is here and all of that, and whether this is more profitable. I assume this is beneficial to you in a wide variety of ways. Otherwise, you wouldn't be making this move. So the signage is not an issue as far as I'm concerned. I thought that I understand the hours and the argument that you're using these hours now across the street, so how is there a big deal if you're transferring them to your new premises? And the answer to that is, I don't know. There hasn't been a lot of sophisticated testimony as to whether opening at 7 o'clock in the morning is going to cause more issues with St. Agatha's School and all of that. I think there's no evidence one way or the other on that. So I think I'd be inclined also to allow the request for the hours. But my concern is that all the neighbors then think that this has been jammed down their throats and they haven't had an opportunity to discuss this with anybody. And what should be a happy move for you and a good business move for you, all of a sudden has become a neighborhood nightmare. So you've heard the board. I think it's certainly possible, if it's helpful to you, I think there's unanimous views on certainly the signage. I think there may be unanimous views on the hours, but I think that the hours are much more concerned of the neighbors than the signs. And if I'm right there, one way of doing this would be to vote the signs, vote the variance for the signage tonight, continue the rest of the hearing, unfortunately until April, allow Mrs. McGetrick and the applicants here to meet with the neighbors to discuss the hours or some modification of the hours that everyone may be happy with. And if you're not able to reach an agreement, then we'll vote the hours up or down. Maybe there's some modification of the hours that would be helpful to the neighbors, and maybe it makes some sense. I just don't think there's a lot of thought been given to the hours, and I think the neighbors are concerned about that. And unfortunately, all we have is they object to the hours, but it would maybe be nice to listen to the neighbors and to see what they say about the hours. And and then come back here in April, and we can vote on the hours without a lot of further falderall. That's my view of it. Jeff, do you have anything further to say?
Well, hear from you.
Okay, how about Nick, you all set?
I'm all set, yeah.
Okay, Mrs. McGetrick, I'm gonna say it's 9:29. Mr. Corcoran is back there, but if you want, do you want to take a couple of minutes to talk with the neighbors? You strike it with your clients and see if you want to make a proposal to us, what you prefer us to do. I think it's in your best interest to do that. And then
Right.
take 3 or 4 minutes, please. We're in recess.
We have
10
conferred.
seconds,
Okay.
so the
Oh,
TV people
TV's
can
off, okay.
refocus and get everything set. And we're delighted to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. We're more than happy to meet with the neighbors who have the concerns. Wasn't sure what the board wanted to do about signs versus hours, but certainly we have no choice, would have to wait until April for the continuance. But that, we could live with that, and we will, because we want a good result.
And what I'm concerned about is what Mr. Gray said, is that if you don't have the signs up for the next 2 months, you could have chaos there, and that's not the way to run a business.
And we've had to, we took the banners down, there's nothing up there now, so.
How long would it
so-
take you to get signs up there? You do that at your own risk, I guess, in the event that things blew apart, but you could do some signage there. Okay, go ahead, Marion, I'm sorry to.
Okay, so I'm not sure how you would structure this in terms of a decision, but in terms of discussing the hours, we have discussed the hours with the neighbors to the rear, but we have not met with St. Agatha's Road neighbors, and I think there's one person on Andrews Road who signed that letter too.
Yes.
Would want to talk to all of those neighbors, and I think it should be fairly easy to arrange a meeting. We have the names.
And I think Mrs. Sergi will help you
Yeah.
to arrange that meeting.
So, and then we'll just report back to the board. You'll need to set a date if you can tonight, so we know when the continued hearing would be.
Okay. And do you want us to vote the sign variance
If
tonight?
you're willing to vote the sign variance, I think it's probably more critical in terms of safety
I do too.
and direction. We would ask you to do that, and, we'll get, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. If
Mr.
you
Mullen,
can-
do you have any objections to voting
No.
on the signage tonight?
No, that's,
Comments or questions?
I do.
Yes.
Would you mind if I made a comment?
No.
Okay,
It depends what the comment is, but we can always strike that from the record. Go ahead, seriously.
I think we should talk about, I think any conversation about the sign should require that no left to go up at the same time. I think the sign should only be lit when the business is open. And the hours, see, the reason to me why the hours are better is the Sunday is a big deal on the facts, I think. And, but, consistent with the way that this variance application is really playing out, that too would amend the variance. So to the extent, it's unusual, right? We're not running the business, but it does feel to me like the business is kind of running with the variance now, the way that this is going. So hopefully you'll be there a long time and we won't have to have multiple, but that's the way I think it would work, because if it works that way for the signage, it would want to work that way for the hours, because Mr. Sergi was right, thematically, I think we all, and I think we made it a point at the time that we weren't designing the building, but an objective of that building was to make it look more like a residence than a commercial structure, because the building that was there, as dilapidated as it was also kind of looked like a structure,
yeah.
like a residential structure.
Yeah.
So, but with that, incorporating my prior comments, I'd be supportive of the signage.
Okay, Mr. Gray, what do you have to say?
I am supportive of the signage as well. I think it's important to get it up as, for the safety of the neighborhood and as quickly as we can.
And what I think it also does, it will narrow the scope of your endeavor. and then when you're dealing with the neighbors. And you won't have architects and engineers and people come in with all new signs and suggest, that's not in your best interest, and it's really not fair to you under these circumstances. I don't see how anybody objectively can say those signs are not tasteful and aren't really related to the building. So, with all that is a preamble. All those who are favoring the relief in the amendment of the variance to allow the signs as reflected on the drawings filed by Mrs. McGetrick, with the exception, as Mr. Mullen says, that the no left turn sign be put up there right away. And I don't think that's your obligation. I think that's the landlord's obligation, but that be done quickly. And Mr. Gray was 100% right. We did cover that in our use variance for the building. And secondly, that the sign only be lit when the business is in operation, and this 1 hour after the business is closed is really not what we're looking for here. So all those in favor of that type of amendment to the variance, please say aye.
Aye.
And on the question of the hours, we're going to suspend the meeting and adjourn it to a date that Ms. Sutton is going to give us in April, and it's my hope that at that time we'll have a stipulation between the parties and we can put to rest the final part of the variance.
Okay. Second week, third week?
Yeah, let's just make sure we don't pick Holy Week.
I don't know when April vacation is.
Yeah. When is that?
Here's the 12th.
It must be around the 19th, isn't it?
I have to check this.
April 12th is Easter.
Oh, okay, so it's,
I just checked.
could be that week then.
17th sticks in my head. Is that April 17th is, our son is going to Portugal, so it sticks in my head that that's April vacation week.
Oh, yeah, because he leaves on the 10th, right?
No, I thought the 17th, does it say? Maybe on my phone it says. We didn't share calendars. Is the 17th Friday?
Yes,
Yeah, so it's that following week.
okay.
Oh.
So it could be the week
Oh, yeah.
before, the week of the 13th. Or 14th.
Sorry.
What are you looking at, Bev?
The week of the 13th,
Well, Easter's Monday.
6th.
Easter Sunday, and that's Easter Monday. April 15th is a sad day for all of us, so I think we don't want to...
Okay, so we go the week after or 2 weeks?
my sister's
one-
anniversary.
1 week before or 2 weeks after, because the week
I pay my
after.
quarterly, so
I do too, but
Yeah, on the 15th.
Be
Yeah,
insufficient.
we all, well, you need to up them.
you're
That's,
going to send me a bill for your tax advice?
there it is, right there. Yep,
I don't like your
congratulations.
advice. I'm hiring Marion to represent.
I'm sure she'll give you a better.
Do you want to do this the 16th, or do you want to go into the week of the 20th?
We cannot go into the week of the 20th, it's school vacation.
Oh, okay.
So we can do the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th, 11th, and 12th is not good because it's
Well, the-
precedes Easter.
Yeah, it's Holy
Yeah.
Thursday the night.
Yeah.
16th what?
16th is a Thursday,
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that'll work.
after we're all broke. We'll have nothing else
Well,
to
I'll be
do.
burned out from preparing taxes, but that's fine. I'll be awake for this.
Can't afford you to prepare taxes.
Well, for you, John, we'll work something out.
16th, look good? How is that, folks? All right?
All right, April 16th.
And would you do me a favor,
Meet again.
Mrs. McGetrick? Would you just notify Mrs. Sergi, or maybe
Yes.
Bev can do it?
I
so-
have I have copies of the letters with all the names, but I'll contact Mrs. Sergi and see if she
So we're
can
going to,
help
we're going to
us.
do the 16th at, April 16th at 7:30. Let's assume this building until notified otherwise, to discuss the hours of operation only. All right?
Thank you.
Good, thank you for your,
Thank you. Thank you for all your time. It was very helpful.
passing that?
No,
on?
no, I'm getting them.
I got a great picture from Bob Jubenville's office of the 480, 4, have you seen that?
No.
The expressway was just, the expressway was in, but it was closed, yeah.
Somebody, is that gonna put on hold the written decision for signing?
I think you're going to want one.
I think so, too.
2 decisions you need here now.
2 decisions.
Yeah, on one application. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Signage.
I'm not gonna sign, I'll bring it.
Don't
Oh,
worry
okay.
about it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Is everything that? Oh, that's,
There's some mine.
okay. Okay, you got all that next.
Mr. Corcoran, are we past your bedtime?
No.
Okay.
That's mine.
Oh, you all set to proceed?
Yes.
Mrs. Sutton, you all set? Okay. We're going to call to order our third and our last hearing of the evening, and this is the application of Nicholas and Pamela Lazarus. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Lazarus.
Lazarus, okay. Dated December 4th, 2019, seeking a variance from section 3B1F, accessory uses, and section 8C of the bylaw. The applicants here are requesting to use the carriage house structure located at the rear of the residence at 255 Adams Street as an apartment and lease it to their daughter and her fiance. The records at the building department indicate that the legal use for this pool house is or recreational type building is to be an accessory use to 255 Adams Street. The property is in a Residence A zoning district. I think Mr. Corcoran is going to mention the rest of the issues here. My name's John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me tonight is, to my immediate left is Board Member Jeffrey Mullen, and to my immediate right is Board Member Nick Gray. As we said at the first hearing, we'll first hear from the applicant. We'll hear from people present who wish to speak in support of the applications, hear from people who have questions or wish to speak in opposition to the applications. Tape recording the proceedings, so we'd ask that everyone speak up nice and clear and loud so we'll have an accurate record of the proceeding. As evidence at the proceeding, we do have the December 4th, 2019 application filed by Mr. Corcoran. We have the November 5, 2019 notice of violation by, I was going to say, by Mr. Prondak. We have an addendum to the application in which Mr. Corcoran explains to us his thoughts as to why the relief should be granted. We have a plot plan of the land. Let me just identify that a little bit better. It's by Units Engineering Company of Holbrook, Massachusetts. It's dated January 14th, 2006.
1986.
You're right, it is, 1986. And it shows the subject property, the residence in the front, and it shows, I think, the pool house labeled as a stable.
Correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Corcoran, welcome back to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
I'm sorry, excuse me. We also have, as I requested Mr. Corcoran to supply us with a series of photographs of the ancillary building, which he has done, and Thank you for the photographs. We appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ned Corcoran. I am attorney based in Quincy, live here in Milton, and I'm representing Nick and Pam Lazarus in their appeal. This is an interesting property, and it's an interesting issue relative to various uses allowed, permitted in our bylaws. We have a provision that allows for caretakers to reside in detached garage structures, and we have a separate provision that allows in-laws and others to reside within the dwelling, but not allowed to live in a detached structure. And so we have a bit of an interesting byplay. This is a property that was, this lot was created in 1986 as the subdivision of a much larger lot. The house that the Lazarus purchased in the early 1990s was built in the 1870s. It is a 10,000 square foot structure. It is a big house, and there was an old stable that Mr. Lazarus renovated substantially into this fairly magnificent pool house, recreational house. I have brought along a smaller number of some of those
Oh, sure.
so that one for each member to see. I sort of culled the highlights of the photographs. And I know that, Mr. Chairman, you had asked whether we could supply photographs to obviate a need for a possible view of the premises. This is a property, a house that the Lazarus family has used as their children grew. They moved to Milton when their children were young. They bought this property. And they used the pool house as a sort of recreational facility for their kids. There's a gym in the basement on a lower level. But the first floor was fitted out nicely as a residence. And as you can see, it was done at the time with all of the necessary building permits, but the use is a separate issue from building permits. Over time, as their children grew, occasionally the children would move out and live in the pool house, sort of as a separate living area for them. And then ultimately they've grown and graduated college and then are on their own. They have a daughter who is in Seattle and is relocating to the Boston area. And their goal is to have her move into this pool house next year. The issue arose earlier this year. The Lazarus had gotten some, call it advice with quotation marks, from local real estate brokers who suggested it might be a good idea to lease the pool house. And so they leased it to another couple who had moved into the Boston area. The woman was handicapped. She needed one-floor living close to Boston, and she was basically present in the house for the most part. The Lazaruses have retired. They spend half the year on the Cape. They spend time in Florida. They travel. This is a 3-acre piece of property with a magnificent old restored mansion that was really well restored by the Lazaruses in conjunction with the pool house, and really does need some sort of a caretaker approach. So last May, they entered into a lease of premises with an unrelated couple, and over that period of time, they identified and helped manage the renovation, improvements to the property, issues that were happening, and I've got a memo that I had actually prepared for Mr. Prondak in September. After he came and took a view, there were leaks from the rainstorm coming through skylights that they identified. They were able to have repaired. Carpenter ants that were reported, they were able to have those addressed. Ponding in the driveway, deck repairs, and other maintenance to both the main house and the pool house, mail and deliveries, and other issues. And so it became clear, particularly as the Lazaruses with their current living situation, that the premises need looking after. There is no separate location within the dwelling. It's really not appropriate to lease to unrelated parties within the dwelling. And so they leased the property to this couple. They identified these issues. And so, and I'll hand these copies of memos in for the record. And so they really acted in the capacity as a caretaker, but unlike the provision of the caretaker bylaw, which requires them to be employees, the purpose for living in the premises is really to do full-time maintenance of the premises. You know, this is a different day and time. They were able to perform those type of services. Once they received the notice from Mr. Prondak that this was not an appropriate activity, the tenants have since vacated, so they are no longer in the premises. They had a one-year lease, but they have since vacated. So in that regard, the specific appeal of that cease and desist notion would be moot. I think really what we're looking for is relief going forward. As I said, their daughter is relocating and plans to move in this spring with her fiance.
More like next summer.
Or next summer, but will be relocating, and they would collectively like them to live in these premises. They'll be available to full-time, take care of the property, and be available to be helpful to their parents, or to her parents, at times, as they're aging, at times when they are in the property. There is no direct authority within either bylaw that would facilitate what we're asking for. I've had some conversation with a member of the planning board about the notion of recrafting the town's bylaw to address the hodgepodge nature of the way these things have been done over time. But in the meantime, the earliest we'd get to town meeting would be a year from May. In the meantime, you don't know whether that passes or not. So what we're really asking for is, this is a very unique and interesting situation. Given the age of the main house, the size of the main house, the size of the property, the unique nature of the lot, that it really calls out for relief in the form requested. So with that, I would leave it to the board for questions, and we're happy to respond accordingly.
Mr. Mullen?
Who are the people? The daughter? It's your daughter?
My daughter is in Seattle currently. She's getting engaged. They want to move back to Boston.
So her daughter and is her fiance?
So they're getting married in August, and they would probably move back around that time.
So is the request for the daughter and the fiance, or for any family member?
Well, I mean, broader would be better. We also have aging my in-laws are, my father-in-law's not well. I mean, he wouldn't live, they probably couldn't even live there. They'd have to live in our house, but,
You're really seeking
it's a typical family situation.
You're seeking an approval from this board to permit your daughter and her fiance to live in this property beginning next summer.
Yeah, I mean.
But the reason you're here
everything is
now.
depending upon when they leave their jobs, when they get jobs here.
Okay.
And, yeah.
But this all started with the cease and desist, so, okay.
Right.
So is there a pool in the pool house?
There is
Yes.
there is a pool. You can see it on the map. I downloaded.
Inside the building?
No.
Oh, it's just the house, the pool's next door? Okay.
The downstairs has a
Rec room?
rec room.
Yeah, okay. When the pool house was the pool house was originally designed to have a kitchen?
Yes,
And that, you got a building permit for that?
yes,
And when the town permitted you to put a kitchen in the pool house,
right.
they did not expect somebody to be living in the space?
That's what I thought.
Jeff, if I could, the original pool house that was allowed shows like a hot plate. It's not a full-blown kitchen. It's something that you may cook a hot dog on. It doesn't show a big refrigerator and a big 8 stove.
My memory doesn't go back that far to remember what the plan showed, but what I do know for
Yeah,
sure is that I'm saying my memory does, I'm sure the plan does. What I'm saying is that the building inspector saw everything. We had the plumbing inspector there, the electrical inspector, everybody was there. So whether.
The building,
whatever-
Are you saying, Mr. Lazarus,
Yes.
that you built out the kitchen and the so-called bedroom, which was supposed to be a changing room? You built them out under the plans that were provided to the building inspector, and they were inspected by the building department, and nobody said anything to you?
Yes.
And you didn't make these improvements 2 or 3 years after your permit?
The building inspector, look, Paul McDougal, who's the plumber, because all this is plumbing, really. I asked him, I said, Paul, did you get all the permits? I wasn't involved in getting it. Wouldn't know how to pull a building permit or a plumbing permit if my life depended on it. But I asked Paul, because he still is a neighbor and active in the town. He said, of course, we got all those permits. So, that's all I know.
Because we had a different building commissioner then.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that pool house under the application that was filed was to service the pool.
That's
No,
what I call
no.
a pool house.
And in
not-
fact-
Not to be a residence.
and in fact, there was a variance granted by an earlier makeup of this board to address a side yard setback
Yes.
for that pool house.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, nobody lived in the place for the previous, whatever, number of years since we built it.
Sure, a long time.
It was literally used as a party house and a place, a rec room, and it was.
We never got
pool table.
invited.
I'm sorry?
We never were invited.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could another way to look at this be that the pool house is part of the main house and your daughter and her fiance are moving home?
Yes.
Except that it's detached.
Yeah.
Well, I understand it's detached, but it's part of the house. So they may be there, but it's part of the house. And it's been outfitted in accordance with permits granted by the town, and therefore no relief is granted.
That's not true.
Okay.
Regretfully, that's not
That's
true.
what I just heard, though.
No, you heard that Mr. Lazarus hired somebody to pull the permits to build the house according to the plans and the rules of the town, and instead, they built out a kitchen and a bedroom, which are not shown on the plans that were submitted, and that are subject of the relief that was granted. So the contractor and others built out something that was not permitted, rather plainly, and yet it was, according to Mr. Lazarus, and I don't doubt your credibility, he says it was inspected by the previous building inspector and his staff, and they approved it as built.
I see.
And that's why he continued to use it for the last 15 years.
Okay. Yeah, that's very different.
Our kids would occasionally have parties, and kids would stay down there. It was never a residence, but clearly, I mean, I asked Paul, just, when this whole thing came up, I said, Paul, because he still does work for us, and the contractor just, I don't know where he is now, but he hasn't done work for us for years. But I said, Paul, the most important thing here was, obviously kitchen, there's gas for the stove, there's, plumbing for the sink. I mean, you can't just bootleg it in. I mean, this was a big project. And he said, no, of course not. He said, we got all the permits. So that's all I know.
And the building commissioner is on the record of...
Presently.
Yeah, he's
Present.
concerned about the permits then.
He says it's an illegal use of the structure.
Got it, okay.
The current building
John-
commissioner,
Yeah.
takes a view of the bylaws that's pretty strict, and so,
And
he got in fact, there was a smoke alarm that had gone off, and the fire department responded, and it was the fire department that alerted the building commissioner that people were living
I see.
in this house. That's how they became aware of it. So the Lazarus were blissfully ignorant of the requirements of the bylaw relative to what you're allowed to do, and as are a fair number of our real estate brokers in town. But we now have a situation that's, we've got a building that obviously wasn't, the uses weren't permitted in accordance with the bylaw, and we're trying to address that.
Do you have any more questions?
Not right now.
Mr. Gray?
I understand a little bit
I
better.
don't have any at the moment.
I do understand that the direct abutters on both sides submitted brief notes of
Maybe I will
support.
ask a question.
Sure, please.
So, if the daughter were an employee, would it qualify under the caretaker exception? That was the point of your, part of the point of your presentation. But it can't qualify under the temporary in-law apartment because it's not connected to the main structure. I know that because we denied one.
That's
that was
right. The
not-
question becomes, what's a caretaker?
Yeah. Well,
And how do you determine the status of a caretaker?
and we make the daughter a caretaker, I somehow.
Well, I don't know, but we have to hear about that. But
I think
to
you
me,
can.
the rub is,
Yeah.
sure, you can characterize anybody as a caretaker, but you could then have 500 houses in Milton.
Milton,
Where the
yeah.
people are living in the garage and other ancillary facilities
Yeah.
because they're all caretakers.
Yeah.
Family member, though.
It is a family member, but I
So
don't
it's
know
a-
that makes any difference.
It does, though, because every unit matters, right? And we've tried to read this in-law bylaw as broadly as possible to increase the number of units we've got in the town. We've definitely done that a few times.
I don't know who's done that.
I
but
did that.
Did you?
Well, I
You
did that
shouldn't- I
on
don't-
Hinkley Road with the neighborhood's
the-
support.
The whole tenor of the bylaw, I haven't done that. The whole tenor of the bylaw is that these uses, caretakers, in-law apartments.
Right.
In fact, people want to abolish the in-house apartments because they're a pain in the neck. It's impossible to enforce them. They're bringing renters in there. And when the family member who originally is permitted dies, the property isn't converted back into the residence as the statute requests. And we've got one coming up in February that I'm not going to sit on, but it was approximately 18 years after the proposed tenant died. And they wouldn't, despite requests by the building inspector to reincorporate the in-law apartment back into the dwelling, they still didn't refuse to do it. And now, what do? They come up with something that Mr. Corcoran would suggest. Oh, let's put a family member there, and we can keep our apartment. So where do you make these distinctions, and how do you enforce them? And sure, practically speaking, this is better than 9/10 of the houses in Milton, your pool house. It's magnificent. I hope you're an architect, because who's ever doing this is magnificent property. It's just built out beautifully, the rugs, the color scheme. This could be an architectural digest in my view. But that's the rub. Do you let the kids live in there just because this is a fabulous place to live, or are they really caretakers? And if they are really caretakers, if your daughter graduated from Stanford and she's going to be working at one of the finance companies in Boston, 50 or 60 hours a week, is she really a caretaker, or is it a ruse to run around the bylaw? I mean, those are the questions that we have.
Well, when we moved in, there was a caretaker actually living in the building. Mrs. What's her name? Gamble. And in our main house, and he was unrelated. And he actually was a hangover for a while. And we ended up renovating the house, and when we did, he had to leave. So that was a pre-existing use. This, while it was labeled as stable, used to have groom's quarters or whatever it was, because there was a bathroom and bedroom down there too. So there was, depending how far you back, and I'm not trying to, play a lawyer here, even though I'm a lawyer, I'm not this kind of lawyer. And I haven't practiced law like that. But
That's a good thing.
that's a good
That can be a good
I
thing.
got it right, so I stopped. But the fact is, we've got a big house, we're not there, I'll throw myself on the mercy of the court here. When out there, it's dangerous to run Adams Street, to have a house.
So why don't the kids live in the house? Why do you have to have them in the ancillary dwelling? Why don't they move into the regular house? You probably have 8 bedrooms in there.
They'd probably be,
Well, they don't have the privacy.
But
They're it's
And
an
newlyweds
adult,
and-
they're adult children, they'll be married, they're living,
yeah.
it's nice, appropriate to have them in a separate location.
I hear. It's a question of drawing lines
I
and
do have some,
and what would distinguish, I think, Ned, what it comes down to is what would distinguish the Mr. Lazarus' children, daughter and present fiance and perhaps future husband, to be living in there when everyone else in Milton, if they had the land and the resources, could build this type of facility and have 2 houses on 1 lot, and just putting all the kids in there. How do you prevent that? What is unique about this particular application that you can give narrow relief that doesn't create a precedent for everyone else in town, saying we're basically giving preferences to Mr. Lazarus because he's got a magnificent property and it's...
Well, one is done.
It is done.
We can't ignore that.
No, I
We're not
think,
permitting the building to be modified.
no,
We're not being asked to permit the building to be
no,
modified.
I think Mr. Prondak would want the kitchen removed and the bedroom considered to be a changing room again. And Ned is absolutely right, that the conundrum is, if we look to see how many caretakers there are here in Milton, I mean, legitimate caretakers, not labeled caretakers, I don't think we'd have enough to count on our hands.
There is a certain caretaking aspect to this proposal, though.
There is.
Because both buildings are vacant for large portions of the year, is what you
more
just
than
said.
half a year.
Yeah, and they are large properties.
And there is a safety issue there.
Just as these people did. You know, they found roof leaks, they found carpet durants, they found ponding in the driveway, there was, all kinds of stuff. I mean, if somebody's not going around looking at this stuff on a daily basis, bad things happen.
so I
How do you
think,
define a caretaker, Ned? That's a real issue.
Well-
I had trouble finding real good definitions.
no, but I did come up with a proposed rider to a standard lease that would say, and I've got copies of, that would say, as a further consideration for the lease of these premises, tenant shall serve as caretaker for the entire property. Tenant's duties as caretakers to include the following: oversight and management of maintenance of the buildings, grounds, and swimming pool, management of snow and ice removal, preparation of budgets, management of contractors and service providers, and other services associated with management of the property. So sort of a broad authority to manage all the different things that can happen.
So Mr. Lazarus is going to sign a lease with a presumptive lease with, let's forget your children at the present time, with some third party with this clause in the lease. And that would make this person a caretaker when, in point of fact, let's assume they're driving a bus for the MBTA 50 hours a week. And they're really not maintaining the buildings and grounds, that this is just...
Well, they're managing the
Well,
maintenance, they're doing...
first of all, where is it written that a caretaker is a 24-hour job? It's at most, in an apartment building, you have a caretaker for 8 hours, right?
It has to be an employee. They need to be an employee. If you can hire the fiance and the daughter
Of course.
as an employee of the owner, then they don't even have to come in here.
Well, that's what it is.
You would fit within the section of the bylaw that you're quoting, the 3B1F. You can have, except that there may be constructed as part of a garage or stable, family living quarters for and to be occupied only by an employee of the owner or occupant of the dwelling to which such garage or stable is an accessory use. So the building the pool house is an accessory use to the main dwelling. If you're putting somebody in there who's an employee of the owner, then you fit within this
them both employees.
I'm just saying, the only,
I'm sure you would.
The only-
But are they really caretakers?
well, that's the, what is part of, it. What's the consideration for the employment? Is part of, I mean, maybe I'm.
Well, he-
It's either no rent or reduced rent associated with the value of service.
Exactly. I'll pay it cash, I don't care.
Maybe it's dangerous. I'm just trying to,
You know, it's really,
Yeah, but then you could do this to anybody. Well, that's the question,
isn't it better though to have somebody watching out for a property than not?
I think so.
To have a property on a major street that's an historic property, that's got, I mean, it's an old house, right? I mean, it's all been redone, but it's an old house, things happen all the time. Probably twice a week, either Paul McDougal's there, or an electrician's there, or somebody's there doing something. Someone's gotta meet them, somebody's gotta, let them in, somebody's gotta do all this stuff. It's not a three-bedroom
I
kid.
hear you.
It requires.
You're suggesting that your daughter and your fiance or present, future husband, if they were living in there, would have these responsibilities. Legally, they'd have these
Yes, of
responsibilities.
course.
And would they pay you rent?
Probably not.
Okay, well,
Either a nominal rent or reduced rent, some less than market rent, or because they're providing service.
It's really necessary to have somebody there. I mean, it really is. Otherwise, I'll sell the
all
house.
right, but I can
It's as
understand.
simple as that. I can't live there 6 months a year, have nobody else there, and I'm not gonna.
Yeah, but you live in the city. You could stop by here
The in-laws. I'm
once a
sorry.
month. You could stop by once a month. You're living in
Once a
the
month, by
city.
that time, the house could,
Anything
have to
could
see how
happen.
big this
All
property
I'm saying is if you take somebody in there and they're paying you rent, all right? In responsibility for, assuming these responsibilities, okay? Then
it's a very.
I think people are going to say they're not a caretaker.
I think you're wrong. I think there are a ton of people that would want to live in that house for a far, listen, you know what the housing market is like for young couples? There's a million people who would want to live in a house and have the responsibilities to, I mean, we're not talking about cutting the grass and painting the shutters. This is somebody to manage, all of the contractors that are coming and going every week.
Right.
Which is required in a house like this. Or, listen, when we moved into that house, it was like a haunted house. It was a total falling down wreck. We spent 20 years and an untold amount of love, care, and attention to make it a very nice part of this community, a very beautiful home on a very major street. And that takes, on any given day when you drive by my house, you will see pickup trucks in the driveway, and it's not mine. There will be people there painting, cleaning, sweeping, maintaining, needing to get into the basement to do this or that every week. And it's just, it's overwhelming. We can't do it. I mean, we're not around anymore. I'm retired. I'm not going to sit there and be the caretaker myself. But for my kids, it works out, right? So they'll be there. And I've got other kids. So whether if they don't want it, some other kid would want it, or somebody else. But I know a lot of people, a ton of young couples that would love to have that home. Wouldn't you like to live in that home for very reduced
I may
rent?
move in tomorrow if you let me. I'll be a caretaker.
You're willing to manage the plumbers, the electricians, I'll take it. No, I mean, seriously, it's just a practical, you can't compare it to every other situation.
Right, but I think the classic caretaker is somebody who is unrelated, who is performing bona fide oversight and maintenance work at the house. And I think that the closer the familial relationship of the alleged caretaker is to you, the less credible it is whether that's a caretaker. But
Listen, I grew up in a two-family house in Newburyport. My grandparents lived on one side, I lived on the other side with my parents. My parents took care of the house when my grandparents were not there. They took care of our house. It's nothing weird about it. I mean, it's just the way I grew up. And families take care of each other. They take care of each other's properties, and our kids are responsible kids.
well, that's right, but there's a difference between maintaining each other's apartment in a two-family house or a smaller residence, and looking at this is an estate, this is a...
Which requires a
This is a
caretaker.
man, and it does require a caretaker.
Right.
And the question is it a bona fide caretaker, or is it a ruse?
It doesn't look like I'm doing such a bad job of
No,
taking
I
care
think
of
you're
the
doing a
place,
great
right?
job, I love
So,
it.
To say-
I think you should trust me
To say
to take care
that,
of
is it a bona fide caretaker, that day's gone.
It is gone.
Those
I
guys,
agree.
they don't
I
exist
we
anymore.
don't have anymore.
Okay.
So maybe the
But one of the
bylaw
other,
shouldn't
but one of
exist.
the other big demands in this community, and a lot of other communities, is the ability for people who are living longer to age in place and to have access to family or other care.
Now, don't take
that's
this
there.
personally, Mr.
And
Well,
so, that's another reason why it's appropriate to have, their daughter and her husband. Why would, the thought that they would live in a separate room in the existing dwelling as a separate family unit?
It has 8 or 10 bedrooms? It's polite.
It's not gonna last.
It doesn't last.
It wouldn't last.
You wouldn't do it.
Wouldn't last.
Now, there are other situations where the building commissioner has accepted caretaker. Brush Hill Road, there were 2 cases that I had where they were, Brush Hill Road, where garages were built out. There was a family member who moved into the garage while his children.
The garage was not attached?
Garage is not attached. Family, daughter and husband with young children living in the main house. He was half the year in Florida, half here. He moved into the garage as a caretaker. Another situation where the son moved into a detached barn apartment as a caretaker for the grounds, each one working. That's a...
I think I understand what you're saying, and I think I don't...
And I agree that
know
the
what you're
bylaw
saying
needs,
is
the
right.
bylaw needs to catch up.
It does
So-
need to catch up, and I think the building inspector here is trying to do that. That's the
Well, I think what the
The
building,
issue.
no, what the building commissioner said is you have an unrelated couple living here, paying rent, and who are they and why are they here? This wasn't permitted for this purpose.
Well, right, that's right, and that's the other part of it.
And-
The other part of
and-
it is it was never supposed to be built out as a livable residence.
I understand, it was, but the facts are different. The facts are different than the ones that Joe was originally dealing with. That was unrelated. When you say unrelated, not unrelated to each other, unrelated to the owner. Yeah.
They were husband and wife.
Feels to me like more of a compromise, frankly. You've got a family member, the family member happens to be serving as a caretaker in an important property to keep it safe. And I think I'm with you. I think that's probably permitted so long as that person happens to also be an employee.
Yeah, I don't think...
Certainly doesn't
I don't
prohibit
think
it.
a familial relationship disqualifies one from being
Well,
an employee.
I don't either. If it's a true...
Yeah.
If it's a true caretaker...
Yeah.
and-
But on
and
these
not
facts,
something-
John, on these facts, you're not, going into it, he's not asking for a building permit to build this building.
I realize
We're
that.
asking he's asking for a situation basically to save the property. And to get it
Because
into,
I understand Mr. Lasser's position, but they could live in the main dwelling and avoid the whole issue. I know it may not happen, but if they don't want to do it, then fine.
Well, then what? So I have to sell the house or, give it to the trustees of reservations or Milton Academy or something because there's nobody's gonna buy it in this market probably, but if they do, they do. But, I can't leave a house unattended. I'm not gonna change my life and decide, okay, now I've worked all these years, now I wanna spend 6 months traveling and 6 months, at home. But I can't leave the house alone. Look, my wife used to stay home. She was the caretaker. Believe me, you ask my wife, she'll tell you that was more than a full-time job.
Oh, I believe it.
Our daughter is
I believe
planning
that,
to
yeah.
start her own business, so she will have flexible schedule. Our son-in-law has a busy schedule. I'm sure he won't be able to spend a lot of time, but he's a very responsible, resourceful young man. And I think between the two of them, they'll figure out how to get the electrician there on time and get the plumber to fix the
They'll
pipes.
probably buy the main house.
I would hope
And you'll
that,
be
well,
in
the way they're
business.
going, they probably will. But, they're very responsible. All my kids are very responsible kids. And if it weren't them, I've got other friends who have kids who would love to do this. Believe me, anybody would want to take that as a job. The kids do all kinds of stuff today to earn their keep.
Well, let me finish the formalities here, and we can see where it goes. Do you want to say something?
I want to make sure I understand with clarity, and I'm sorry, I'm still flipping through the bylaws. Are we being asked for a variance? Is that what we're being asked for, or are we being asked to tell the building commissioner
No, we're being asked to
That's
grant a
right.
variance.
Variance. And the
That this property, that this building can be used as a caretaker residence by a family member.
But I don't know, I variance for that.
I don't know, you can get a variance for that. Why can't there be a finding that under the present circumstances, if it's your daughter and son-in-law, based upon whatever
right.
this lease or a caretaker's contract, that,
That they're an employee, and therefore it fits within
That was in the
the,
bylaw, you don't need the relief.
we don't need the relief.
That would be acceptable.
If that works for you, I mean,
Works for us.
Isn't that,
I think what you need to do is it has to be very narrow because you've got very unique facts. And, you know,
so what happens, and the question becomes, what happens if your wonderful daughter and a very successful son-in-law,
My daughter's successful too, by the way.
well, I'm sure she is.
She's actually a little more successful than he is right now.
Is that right? What does she do?
She works for Amazon and he works for Microsoft.
Oh, how nice.
the world.
Very nice. Well, it's,
Probably-
I smell a sale coming, but if you assume that they decide to give up
we gotta
the,
keep the property up.
to give up the caretaker's business, then they'd
Well, then
have
someone else is gonna
you'd
have
have
to.
to have someone else approved.
Absolutely.
So this is a caretaker for, we're specifically,
This
Look,
is
we're
this
gonna- We're gonna
caretaker.
need somebody to stay in that.
yeah, you are, I know you are.
We're just gonna have to, and I don't want them living in my house. Not that it's.
I don't see anything in the bylaw that prohibits it from being a
I love my
family.
children, therefore I don't want them living in my house.
Well, they may want the privacy. If they're a newlywed couple, they want the privacy of their own
I
residence.
think it's limited to its facts.
Yeah, that's right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So first of all, number one, is there anyone out there who wants to speak in favor of this? No. Is there anybody who has any questions?
We
No.
actually have 2 letters, I think, in favor.
I think I didn't read them. You
Yeah,
have them? Okay.
for both of the abutters.
That's right, and one of the abutters, so that's kind of interesting. I should,
One was a nice little handwritten note, and
yeah,
another
but
was...
one was reasonably sophisticated. Not that the,
Yeah, they both,
where are they?
not here today.
Tom Doherty and Dimitri Mianakis.
I don't see them, Beth. Oh, wait a second. Here we go. Yeah, one is a nice letter from Jesse and Tom Doherty
Yes.
saying they're longtime residents. They're a wonderful family. Their attorney is terrific, and they should get the relief that they want. The second one is...
3 out of 4 is true.
Dimitri
Mianakis.
Nianakis and Maria Nanis.
Yes.
And they say, have you read this one?
Yeah.
Well, let me read it for the public. It's our understanding that Nicholas and Pamela Lazaris has submitted an application to use the care house as an apartment and lease the structure to their daughter and fiancé. We understand that all of the following conditions will apply to the requested permit. Have you read this, Nick? I
haven't seen that one.
Oh, you haven't, Ned, okay, I'm sorry. Number one, the permit only applies to the adult daughter and fiancé who will be identified on the permit. Number two, the permit is not transferable to any other person. Number three, the permit is for a period of no longer than 4 years. Number four, the town of Milton will periodically verify that the individuals named on the permits are the only individuals leasing and/or residing in the structure. The permit, if granted, will set no precedent for the use of the structure as a rental property. Any future use to use the structure as an apartment or leased premises will require an application per the zoning bylaws of the town of Milton. If all of the above conditions apply to the requested permit, we support the Lazarus application. Sincerely. We should appoint these people to the Board of Appeals.
It's very good.
They're making more sense than we've made in 45 minutes here.
Well, I think Tom Doherty's probably making more sense because he's also a lawyer. But,
They probably went online and read the bylaw for
right.
home,
No, in-law.
the in-law apartment.
Yeah, I think they probably did. Okay, so there's nobody else who wants to be heard. Mr. Corcoran, if you've had your say.
I've had my say.
So we'll end the application hearing and discuss it and see if we can reach a consensus tonight, here and now, and before 10:30, because it's now 10:24. Mr. Jeffrey Mullen.
I think the finding solution is a good one, and I think it is consistent with both of those letters. The only issue I think that could be a concern of the building commissioner is the routine verification. I wonder if you'd be willing, on an annual basis, to submit a letter to the town stating who's living there.
Sure.
And that would prompt the town to be aware of who's there.
Just to be clear, it's not necessarily, I mean, Dimitri said whatever he said, but I assume we're not saying it has to be this child. It could be another child, it could be another person for that matter. Could be my in-laws.
I don't think he's suggesting that at all.
All right.
He wants
Okay.
specific people named.
All right, so
I
we'll
think
just
they
say
should.
who it is. And
Yeah.
we'll tell
Otherwise, it's,
Well, I think Nick addressed it. I mean, these are unique facts. The issue that we're struggling with isn't your property, it's all the other properties, and it's the fact that you can't have two dwellings on one lot. And there aren't two dwellings on one lot. There's a pool house that needs to be cared for, or somebody living in the pool house to take care of the entire estate, which is really what's going on in the bylaw. I agree with Ned that it is outdated, but nevertheless, that's what it says. I'm also a believer in using property, especially given the housing situation we have in the region. So, to me, that all adds up to a letter or a finding to the building commissioner that says that we had this hearing. And, perhaps it could be co-signed or something like that. I don't know if we've ever done this, John, but it sounds like the right kind of thing. I mean, it sounds like maybe a little guidance for the building commissioner.
you're outside of the variance process.
I don't think you need a variance. I don't think you want to do a variance. I don't think you want to subject yourself.
I don't know that we have the ability to make
It
a
feels to
variance.
me like a letter, and that would permit the building commissioner to permit the use. And maybe we could have the letter, making it up and talking out loud, co-signed by you, so that you would agree to the conditions.
Sure.
And that would satisfy Mr. Dimitri's requirements as well. And in doing so, we could simply state that these facts are indeed unique. You've got a unique situation. And frankly, if we didn't accommodate it, the property would go to waste, and that's not in the public's interest.
What that would do is that would alleviate 90% or 95% of people trying to convert their garage or build a micro house in their backyard so that they could have their children live there and say they're caretakers.
Well, I think, yeah.
That's the risk. Then you get two dwellings on the same lot.
Well, I
You
think
can't
if
do
that were, I think if you were in front of us asking for a variance to modify the property as shown, I think we would have a different conversation, but the fact that it's already been done, it does indeed need to be cared for, I mean, I think that's a big deal. So I think that also addresses it, John, and I think it distinguishes, and I think the letter should say that. Here are the facts. I don't know, I don't know if we need to get back to the building permit, but the fact is the property's been significantly improved. And it's a significant property that's vacant for, did you say half the year?
Half the year.
And the other half of the year at the Cape?
We're at the Cape and we travel, yeah, I'd say at least 6 months we're not there.
Yeah. So that's the tenor of what I'm suggesting.
Now the whole world knows that he's not there for 6 months.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
My son-in-law to be is a martial arts, no. he's not.
All the more reason now for a caretaker.
I do support updating the bylaw. I mean, I know that you work in these circles, and, I mean, there's a couple of, that in-law apartment, and then this, and,
I've had direct conversations with at least one member of the planning board about taking a real run at this, because
we should be working on our housing production and the number of units we've got.
I'm doing that too.
Yeah.
Mr. Corcoran, my suggestion is that, can you put together a draft of that letter with a lot of emphasis on the peculiar and unique facts of this particular property, with a lot of emphasis on the residents and the square footage of the residents and the assessed values here and all of the reasons why this makes sense with the serious issue of waste to the property if nobody was permitted to live here. and with an annual letter submitted to the building commissioner for his review and approval on an annual basis.
At least the annual letter to the building committee identifying who's living in the premises and what services that they're.
Will be,
And what's-
will be
and-
living.
and what
What that
services?
people do, I mean, you've got some good language here that you,
That is some good
you could,
language.
you could work with that. I mean, it doesn't, I agree with that, John. That's the spirit of what, and therefore you avoid the variance and,
Right.
but you do resolve the matter. And I'm assuming that this is to your satisfaction, because otherwise we won't do it. We'll do something else, or we'll deny it, or.
No, the letter makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Nick, do you have any comments?
No, I think that's exactly the right solution for this particular case. Yeah.
For another one, we'll do something else,
Yeah.
or.
Can I ask you one question? Is the residence as magnificent as the pool house?
Very nice.
I thought you were an architect, or,
My wife is a very good designer.
Yes,
Actually,
but-
you know, I did that, Mark Schmidt did the design on the pool house, and he helped us with the renovations of his main house, too.
really?
He did a nice job.
It's
Mark
stunning.
Mark was in town, but he lived on Kent Avenue for a long time.
The architecture, the color scheme, the rugs,
Yeah.
it's.
That's
it's
well,
just-
the inside is mostly my wife. She's very good.
Happened too, right?
It's 10:30.
Looks like there's lawn cutting.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so I would, we're not going to enter a formal decision tonight, or what we'll do is we'll have to approve.
I mean, you could withdraw. You probably withdraw, and it's been resolved, because the issue's moot. Assuming the building commissioner, this satisfies the issue that you have.
Well, why don't we do this? I wouldn't withdraw the application until you've had the letter approved.
Yeah, I think,
Let's
I think the board should be
continue the hearing.
in a position to vote to approve the letter and to recognize. You're not,
Is the problem if that's in April?
Well, why can't it be self-operating? If we had a letter that was executed, the board,
And approved by the building inspector?
yeah, the real concern I have is building inspector isn't satisfied, because that doesn't get you what you need.
Right.
But I would suggest that this board could sign such a letter consistent with this hearing, without having another hearing. And that, because John's going away until April.
I know that, and they're not, there's no one moving into the premises.
But to get us together just for that,
Right.
so long as the letter, we'll all have an opportunity to review it, Joe will have a chance to look at it, people sign, then it'll have a self-operating effect.
Right, and if he has any suggestions, he may have some better exceptions
Might.
and advice that we have.
Yeah.
We'll get it taken care of. And if lo and behold, the whole process falls apart, and I don't think it will, you'll still have your application for variance, and
We'll hear it.
you won't have to start again.
Right,
Make
okay.
sense?
Sure.
Perfect. So
Great.
the date that you continued the one ahead of us? April 16th, okay.
Do you want to, I feel we've had an imposition on you tonight for keeping you here so late. Do you want to do 7:15 or something like that, so you won't get stuck if there are a lot of additional issues on the,
So the first one was continued till 8 o'clock, did you say? 7:30. Oh, it'd be great if we could go right at 7 or 7:15,
What do you think? My guess is we don't need 10 minutes.
I
right?
wouldn't think so.
I think 7:15 would be plenty of time.
Yeah, 7:15 is fine, as long as we get all the paperwork signed up and set, and we can get you in
We'll
and
have-
out, and we won't be here till 10:30.
We'll have time to get that.
Okay, that's great.
Right,
So,
great.
this hearing's going to get continued to, is it April
April 16th.
16, at 7:15, in all probability in this conference room, but just check that carefully, and we'll try to get here early and make some sense.
Oh, because you normally, that's right, you normally start at 7:30,
Yes.
and so they're moving. Thank you for that accommodation.
Well, we apologize to you for keeping it so long.
It's interesting.
Don't write a book about us. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, good luck. Thank you, Ned.